Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Hello, what's happening, dude?
Not much.
Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you too, Joe. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on here, man. I really enjoy your videos, Joe. Your website, your channel, rather, on YouTube, DeDunking, is it's really great because it's so obvious. Like, it's one of those things where you don't need like some big crazy set or high production values to make something interesting. It's just you with a bookshelf behind you talking about stuff, and it's great.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, Joe. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this stuff, so I'm glad that people are taking notice, and that I'm sitting here talking to you right now about it. It's crazy to me. So,
well,
thanks.
you were like me, were one of the early readers of Fingerprints of the Gods. And that's sort of how you got into this whole subject, right?
Yes, I actually had that one pre-ordered from Hastings because I'd read The Sign and the Seal.
Okay.
So I was already like, Graham Hancock's pretty cool. I like the way he's coming at these things. And I saw that there was a thing at Hastings to pre-order Fingerprints of the Gods for like $25 or something. You get like $3 off. And so I did. And was reading it cover to cover when I had Graham sign it, and him and Santa both were just looking at how beat to hell it is, right? Because he'd been in a construction truck where we're going job sites for like 20 years. But
that's awesome. So the Sign and the Seal, was that about Ethiopia and
the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah. What's your take on all that?
It's interesting. Anytime they won't let you see the evidence, I get like all of my alarm bells go off, right? It's like, but I understand why they wouldn't want you to see it if it really is the Ark. I'd like to see, I guess the best thing we could do to test it without seeing the Ark would be to look into the claims that these guys go blind and they show signs of radiation.
Yeah, let's explain to everybody what the claim, that they believe that this one church in Ethiopia actually possesses the Ark of the Covenant, and that these priests that are supposedly guarding this, they all exhibit signs of radiation poisoning.
Yes, they all just exhibit signs of radiation poisoning. They go blind, they die quickly, and then somebody else, and one priest at a time, is allowed to be like the caretaker of the Ark. And
how long do they live?
They want to say like a couple of years, something like that. I can't remember.
Really?
It's been not very long. Yeah, they die pretty quick.
Imagine that job.
Yeah,
you get that call.
Yeah,
you're like, how much do I love Jesus? Am I willing to get radiation poisoning? This is kind of fucking crazy.
Yeah, and it's but there's a lot of evidence in that book that was really interesting, like the Knights Templar statues and stuff, and in old Paris cathedrals that would lead Graham to Ethiopia. Just all kinds of weird stuff that made it really interesting. Little Indiana Jones, man. It's like real life kind of Indiana Jones shit. And so I was just anxious for that fingerprints. And I was
something that has that much radiation that kills people so quickly, wouldn't that be something that you could measure from outside of the church?
You'd think that our boys would be all over that shit with the satellites and be like, yeah, that's a spot to watch out for. Send a team.
Right. Because that was one of the speculations about the New Jersey drones. Which was really weird, was that there was allegedly, this is part of the speculation, allegedly there was a warhead that was missing from when, what was it, from Ukraine? I think it was from like quite a while ago. So there was a warhead that was not accounted for, a nuclear warhead. And the thought was that somehow or another it had gotten snuck into the United States. And these drones had the capability to scan for gamma radiation, and that they were looking for excess gamma radiation, which would indicate that this thing was there.
That would make sense. I saw that on Twitter. I saw a few guys talking about it. That would definitely make sense. It's weird that the drones just kind of stopped around Christmas time.
But not only did they stop, but there was also this I hesitate to even talk about this because so much of this is horseshit. But there was a lot of speculation on Twitter that there was something that broke up in the atmosphere, and that the conspiracy was that this was a Chinese satellite that was controlling those drones.
Oh.
And then the Trump administration recently said, no, they are our drones. I mean, okay, why wouldn't you fucking tell us if they were our drones? You're just flying a bunch of SUV-sized drones over New Jersey for weeks at a time.
Yeah, it had to be some reason.
Yeah, what was going on? And how, I get I get you can't tell us everything. I get it.
But it was weird. They just stopped at the Christmas time. I was kind of worried about that because when I went to see Mark Gagnon in Brooklyn, I just was there last week, and I was like, man, I hope I don't see a bunch of dang drones in the sky and stuff still, but because I've had that booked out for a couple of months. But
Yeah, my friend Mark saw one. Mark Norman, he saw one. He said it was huge.
Really?
He said it was really big and it moved really fast. And he said it had propellers, but it didn't sound like a regular helicopter. So it was real weird.
I saw a lot of videos of them, and I saw a few guys talking about them that seemed somewhat credible on Twitter, but I didn't see that like guys that had talked about being weapons developers and stuff like that. But it's so easy nowadays to just bullshit your way through things, and there's money in it, right? I mean, you get clicks, so the days of it needing to be a government conspiracy in my mind are like way long gone. If I pretend I see Bigfoot and I fake it good enough to get a bunch of to get on Joe Rogan, well, man, I'm doing pretty fucking good now, ain't I?
Yeah, you can make some money.
Exactly. So
that is a real problem.
I'm really skeptical of like everybody nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, treat them all like crackheads.
I am too, and I like that about your channel, that you are quite skeptical about a lot of things, even things that the people that are heretics of the archaeological world, they subscribe to, and you're like, not so fast, which I think is great.
Well,
I think it's very important. But getting back to the Ethiopia thing, if we have this capability supposedly to scan for gamma radiation from the sky, why wouldn't someone fly over that church and go, yo, there's a crazy hot spot here?
You would think probably somebody has. If not, like I was saying with the satellites, in all honesty, the feds monitor that kind of shit, like heavily. And so, I mean, if it's possible that it wouldn't be, any kind of weapons grade stuff, so they might just not be looking for that particularly.
Can they monitor for gamma radiation from satellites? Can
I'm
they
not
do that?
sure. I know that they can look for, I'm not sure how they detect it. I'm not sure what they use to detect it, but I know that they can look for radioactive material from space.
So the thought is that if this Ark of the Covenant is there, and whatever it is somehow radioactive, is there any sort of theory as to how they develop some sort of radioactive thing? Like what is it supposed to be? I mean, it's not a reactor. It's in a box, right? Like what is it?
Well,
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. People like to throw around all these red flags, things someone says or does that you don't like, which is fine. But instead of focusing on the negative all the time, why don't we focus on the positive? If you're looking for a romantic partner, think about what traits you like to see in a person. If you like to work out and stay in shape, you might want to find someone who's also health conscious. Or if you like to travel, you probably want to find someone who's just as adventurous. Now, once you're in a relationship, it's a whole different ballgame, and things aren't always going to be perfect. But that's what therapy is for. Therapy is an excellent way to work through any problems, even the small ones. Like, say you and a loved one have been fighting a lot lately, but you still really want to make things work. Therapy can serve as a mediator. It can help you identify the problem and teach you positive ways to address it. If you're new to therapy or want to try something different, BetterHelp is a great place to start. It's convenient and affordable since everything is done online. It's already helped over 5 million people worldwide connect with a credentialed therapist. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/JRE to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/JRE.
The theory that a lot of people have is that it's a weapon, that like in the Bible it's described like shooting lightning and things like that.
Right.
And what Graham mentions in the book, it's an interesting point, is the Bible records Moses going up to Mount Sinai, coming down with the Ten Commandments, getting mad at the Israelites worshiping a golden calf, and he breaks the Ten Commandments and then goes back up the mountain and comes back down after another week or so with the Ten Commandments again. And Graham points out that this could be a memory of him going up and getting the wrong stone, and then, damn it, smashes it, goes back and finds the right stone that he's looking for, that it had the proper, uranium-rich or whatever speculative radiation stuff. So, but inside of the box, a popular theory is, you've got metal, wood, metal, like a transformer. And so the popular theory is it's a way to generate electricity, and it was also described like the way that guys in the Bible are, if they touch it, they have to carry it with sticks, and if they touch it even to steady it, they get killed and stuff. But I honestly, I don't see it being a transformer. That wood metal or metal wood metal thing has to be stacked. You're not just getting it with one layer like the Bible describes. But it's an interesting thing.
When you say it has to be stacked, you mean spaced in between each layer?
Yeah, like if you've ever seen a doorbell transformer.
No.
Okay, transformers at the bottom of it will have multiple plates. It'll be like a plate of metal and then a plate of silicone or something like that. That's conductive, non-conductive, conductive, non-conductive, and there'll be multiples of those. And this is part of the electromagnetic changing of the because what a transformer does is it steps electricity up or down and swaps voltage for amperage, basically. The metal plates are part of it. So the idea is that this thing would collect electricity inside the box, and then the Israelites would use it to throw lightning at the enemies. Now, there's still a lot of speculation as to how the box would work, but Moses was also said to, after going up and seeing God, he was said to have had to cover his face with a cloth for the rest of his life because it was shown. And Graham speculated in that book that it might be because of radiation sickness or something. His face was covered in sores for the rest of his life. So it is interesting.
So if this thing is radioactive, like how would that conduct electricity?
No idea. It would probably be if it was maybe it's the power source, like we have radioactive batteries on satellites and shit, right? And they convert that radiation into electricity. So it's possible. I mean, I'm not really too big on the ancient high technology, but I'm always willing to speculate and look at the angles on it, and that's basically where they come from. On the guys that are really big into the ark. Some guys even will claim that it's a capacitor, like full-on capacitor, which a capacitor stores and discharges electricity. It's why we were told not to, when you don't touch the tube on your TV when we were kids,
right?
Because it'll zap you. The capacitor.
We're old.
Yes,
we remember tubes on TVs.
I watched a friend of mine working on an arcade machine once, and one of the leads popped off of the thing, and he was bald, and it tapped him on the top, and it fucking laid his ass right out.
Wow.
Bam! Straight to the ground. I was like, oh, shit. You okay?
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, that's what a capacitor is. So some guys believe, like Billy Carson would say, that the Ark of the Covenant would fit inside of the sarcophagus of the King's Chamber, which it doesn't, and that it's a capacitor to power the pyramid.
So it doesn't. How do you know that it doesn't?
But the Bible has the specifications for the size of the Ark of the Covenant, and they're not the same as
How different are they?
Considerably.
Is it larger or smaller?
The Ark is larger.
Oh, it's larger
Quite a bit
than.
larger.
Oh, really?
Well, than the inside of the sarcophagus.
Have you ever seen the one that Donald Trump has at Mar-a-Lago?
No.
He has a recreation of the Ark of the Covenant at Mar-a-Lago.
No shit?
Yeah. It doesn't look bigger than
Really?
The reason why I said it is it doesn't look bigger than the sarcophagus. Maybe I need to look at it again.
There's a possibility that I'm wrong there, but I know that the measurements are off by enough that it was like, this isn't just a little mix and match. It's way off.
I feel like we should have a recreation of the Ark of the Covenant here.
You probably should.
I probably should.
There's no reason.
Jamie, can you pull up that one? Was it visiting the Mar-a-Lago?
I think so. I was trying to find a story.
But it's pretty dope, man. It's like Indiana Jones type dope.
Nice.
It's really cool. It looks awesome. But if that's real, and these guys are just guarding it and dying of radiation poison, like, hey, get some fucking better leadership and let the world know. I mean, if you really want people to believe in God and the Bible, what better way than to say, not only is the Ark of the Covenant real, but we have it here at this church in Ethiopia, and we've been suffering for the past X hundred years. I mean, how many priests have died?
I don't know. I have no idea. It would be a lot.
That'd be a good thing to know.
Well, this would be. I mean, this was supposed. The Ark was supposed to have been brought there by Sheba, the Queen of Sheba's son, Menelik. So you're talking thousands of years, right?
So Ethiopia has a lot of. Here it goes. That's it.
Oh,
That was a
damn.
Trump's place.
That's the one that was a Trump's place.
Definitely a replica.
Oh, that's not the one?
No, it is.
It is the one?
Well, who knows, right? No one's seen it.
Right. But I mean, that's not what I meant. I mean, the one that's at Mar-a-Lago, there's photos of it at Mar-a-Lago
This
where
is the
people
one that
sitting.
was at Mar-a-Lago.
Wow.
See, that looks like that would fit inside the sarcophagus, doesn't it? Scroll up a little so I can see it.
Yeah, maybe I was wrong about that, but I do know.
Except for the handles. The
I do
handles are
know
getting
that
away.
the measurements are off drastically. It's not just an inch or two. It's enough that you're not sliding one.
Can
into
you
the
show a photo of it at Mar-a-Lago? I know we pulled it up at one point in time. Because when these folks are standing around next to it, yeah, they're the
okay.
far left. Yeah, see?
Yeah.
See, that looks like it
Yep.
would fit in there.
It does look like it would. But yeah, if you look up the measurements, I wish I don't have them off the top
I
of my
was
head.
doing that, but it's sidetracked.
But yeah, they
Look
are
at that.
the King's Chamber. Yeah, if the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber and the Ark of the Covenant are. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we should send the Green Berets into that church. Like, come
Well,
on.
yeah, there's
Come on,
no-
guys. Tell us what the fuck you got.
Go get some.
Enough of this. Enough hiding. You this is like, if you have that, that's something for the whole human race to know. That's not something for you to hide. That's not yours to covet. That's wrong.
No, but if they've been hiding it forever and it's a religious icon and they're like the keepers of it or whatever.
Yeah, look how big the sarcophagus is in the King's Chamber.
Yeah, dang.
That thing's that's
Yeah.
crazy. The King's Chamber itself is so bananas. The whole thing, like, why? What did you do? Why'd you do it this way? How'd you have the resources? How'd you get those stones that are that big up so high?
Oh man, there's so much about the pyramids in general that are just so hard to even, like like I'd mentioned a little bit last time we talked, the squaring of it is so. It's like 756 feet long, and there's like 2 to 3 inch variation on at the most. So you're talking like thousandths of a percent on this massive thing. And then if you just stretch a rope from one end of this table to the other and hold it tight, it's going to sag a little. You're 756 feet. You're not getting a 2-inch accurate measurement at that
With a rope,
With the
right.
rope, so you have to use something different.
Yeah. So what are you using?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you using? How are you using it? How do you get 2,300,000 stones all placed within 20 years?
the 20 years? Yeah,
The 20-year thing is nuts.
Just throw that one out because that's the cynical side of things. That's where they are. We have to stick to what we know,
Yeah.
what we believe. It's like just a couple pharaohs before that guy built 3 pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just say, well, these guys were only building them each generation for tombs. It seems to me like it's a multi-generational project. If these guys were the ones that built them, like the historians say, it seems to me like every generation was working on 3. I break ground on my grandsons. I'm getting my sons going, and I'm finishing mine. Every generation was probably doing that because these things probably took 100 years to build. Man, they're huge.
Yeah, the only explanation outside of that, it was some lost technology.
Yes,
That's the only explanation. The problem with the lost technology thing is, where's the tools? Like, what'd you use? There is some evidence that there's some sophisticated cutting methods, the coring, the drills that indicate like a very high speed drill, which is interesting. So it's not just as simple as getting some tube and slowly working its way through. The way it's cut into some of the granite indicates that it was done at a high speed. So the question is like, how, what was the material, where is it, what happened to it?
And you like. The argument, of course, would be this is the kind of stuff that we get looted right away, right? If you watch Mad Max, they're not running around picking up bottle caps; they're picking up the stuff you can use. But on the flip side of that, the evidence. If you look at any one of your videos or mine that are about the pyramids, you're going to have thousands of comments of people that are like, here's my theory on the pyramids.
Right.
And most of these are pretty mundane. Most of these are, I think they might have used water to, I think, we kind of need to exhaust, in my mind, all that mundane shit that the people can throw at this problem before we really can start saying, okay, well, now let's just step outside of history and speculate harder. I'm willing to entertain the things, but if you really want to find out what happened, in my mind, you kind of have to be more grounded with it. That's how I look at it.
Well, I think if we're looking at a linear timeline between the technology that was available to people, say, 15,000 years ago and today, then you have to look at it in a more mundane way, because obviously they didn't have electricity then. You're thinking, obviously they didn't have diamond tip cutting tools that were made out of like some super titanium or whatever the fuck the alloy was. But if we're looking at lost technology, and if we're looking at the possibility of, when you get into Graham Hancock stuff, specifically the Younger Dryas impact theory, which I'm always fascinated by both the people that fully support it and the people that fully dismiss it. Both of those things are interesting to me because you don't know. Just stop.
Thank you.
Just stop.
Thank you. That's
shut your hole.
so accurate right there.
Shut your hole. We're all just guessing.
Yeah.
We're guessing, but we're all looking at some really interesting stuff, right? We're looking at the iridium. We're looking at the micro diamonds, the nano diamonds. We're looking at the
black mat.
Yeah. Do you know about my friend John Reeves up in Alaska, the Boneyard in Alaska?
No, I don't.
John Reeves, he found this. This was actually sawed. That's an ancient mammoth bone. The piece that was cut out was how it was carbon dated, and I forget what the carbon date it was. It wasn't that extraordinary. Hundreds of years, I think, right? It was only hundreds of years, right? Or maybe a couple thousand. I forget what it was. But the fact that it was sawed at the top was very interesting because they were trying to. Some of the bones they've dated to tens of thousands of years, including animals that they've found bones of that weren't even supposed to be in this area. So he has a very small piece of. He has an enormous piece of land, but a small piece of it. I think it's only about 6 acres where they're finding an enormous number of woolly mammoth bones. Short-faced bear, all these different lions, and all these different animals that some of them they didn't even think were in Alaska 10, 15,000 years ago. And there's also a thick layer of dark carbon that indicates that like something happened, like there was some sort of massive burn. And the theory is that there was an enormous flood and that this was a basin where a lot of these animals that died got washed into and then covered. So they have this wall that is essentially permafrost, and they hose it down. They do it all the time, and then they see a mammoth tusk, and then they slowly work their way out. Okay. But he has go to his Instagram page. John was every year he's our last guest, but this year he got pneumonia.
Oh,
so we had to delay him until recently. But this is all stuff that they find. He's a gold miner. So this is all stuff that they find on his property. Well, it started out incidentally, and now they search for it. But that's John right there in the middle with the baseball hat on. So the big guy right there, he's a giant human.
I see.
So, I mean, you got to see him in real life. He's huge. But this area that he has is extraordinary because he's got enormous – see, that's how they hose it all down. So he's set up this multi-million-dollar research facility out there. He's got huge warehouses stored and thousands of these bones.
Wow.
And it's just in a 6-acre area. And then there's another additional area that's a similar size. So that you can see one of the bones, one of the tusks sticking out. But he gave us that a steppe bison skull that's in the lobby. I don't know if you saw that. Mm-hmm. That's 10,000 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And so he's got a bunch of. I mean, he pulls them out left and right. See if you can find like some of the bins that he has. So he's got these enormous. Like, look at all those mammoth tusks.
Holy
just
shit.
Stacks of them.
Yeah.
A ton of them, and they're all over the place. I mean, his property is really, really extraordinary.
Wow.
But it's all his.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to dig this stuff up myself. I don't want anybody coming in lying and bullshitting and controlling the area. It's all on private land, so I'm just going to keep pulling the stuff out of there and hiring people to come in and do some research on it. Yes. Look at all these bones they found. Isn't that insane?
That's wild.
So that's the theory. The theory is that this was an area where a lot of these animals that died probably instantaneously by the impact got washed into.
And I could see that. I mean, there's a lot of fucking bones there, man.
You're only getting a tiny fraction of it. If you actually see it, Jamie, see if you can find one of the images of his warehouses, there's some overhead views of the warehouses. They're huge. And they're just filled with bones. And he pulls them out every day. Like, whenever they want, they go down, they hose down the permafrost. And because it's in the permafrost, it's all preserved.
Yeah. Wow. That's what I was just thinking is permafrost is preserved real well. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just...
Low angle. It's just a
yeah. But these are all storage bins that they have filled with bones.
Oh,
I mean, it's pretty extraordinary.
That is wild. Yeah, that's sad that he doesn't want to bring the scientists in, but I can understand why. It's the way that things are nowadays. It's
he doesn't trust them.
Exactly. A lot of people don't.
And he wanted to come on here to spread it out to the world. One of the things that he found out was that they dumped the previous owners of his property before he owned it. The what museum was it again, Jamie? American National History Museum in New York City had acquired some of the bones, and they had so much of them that they dumped some of them in the East River. Now, they denied it, so he sent divers out to the exact spot in the East River, and they started pulling up steppe bison bones and all these different, ancient animal bones from this exact area where they said to look for it. So it's pretty much been confirmed that it's true, and he does know that they have some of them still, and they won't release them to him. So until they release the bones to him that are rightfully his, he's like, fuck off.
Yeah.
You can't come here.
I can understand that.
But his spot, in my opinion, is one of the best indicators that there was a mass casualty event. There was some sort of a huge catastrophe that took place that killed all of these animals. Now, we know that humans were around back then. The question was, how sophisticated were they? And this is where it all gets so weird, because I've been following this forever and ever and ever. And I was following it long before they discovered Gobekli Tepe. No. And so the question was that the archaeologists would always, the really arrogant archaeologists, would always throw in the faces of these heretics. They would say, well, if this is true, where's the evidence of this ancient civilization that was so sophisticated that can make massive stone structures 10,000 years ago? There is no evidence.
Yep.
Well, now there is.
Yeah.
So now they have to kind of look at it and go, well, okay, we were wrong about that, but we know 2,500 BC maximum, that's how old the pyramids are.
A lot of the scientists, most of the scientists are actually scientists, but the ones that we end up seeing are the ones that are invested in creating a narrative. They're the ones that they want to make sure that pseudo-archaeology and pseudoscience is always on its back foot and never gets a fair day in court and blah, blah, blah. These guys, they don't give us any real accurate interpretation of the data. They'll step way outside of their lane to tell you what's going on.
You mean like Flint Dibble?
I mean exactly like Flint Dibble.
Well, you were the guy that broke down what he was inaccurate about when he was having that air quotes debate with Graham Hancock.
Well, yeah.
It's all very unfortunate because what he does know is really interesting. All that stuff about ancient seeds and stuff and how they change over the time and, how you can tell whether a seed is domesticated versus whether it's feral.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's good at what he does, at least as far as that stuff goes. But there's a guy that's a trained anthropologist that made a couple of videos about him, Sam Urban from Illegitimate Scholar, and he, I think Graham mentioned him here before. He specialized in underwater shipwrecks, and he just blasted the stuff that Flint said, not just the 3 million shipwrecks. He just blasted on a scientific level. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong.
Yeah, he got way out of his lane with that.
Yeah, and that's That's, I guess, one of the biggest things here. All those guys right now are laughing, going, "You're an electrician, Dan. You're outside of your lane every time you talk about this shit." But the difference is,
you're outside of your lane. I'm outside my lane about fucking everything. If I'm not talking about people getting beat up or cracking jokes.
Yeah. Well, only you would have a painting of you busting Shane Gillis's ass.
I didn't make that.
Every time he posts that picture, he's like, "I had a great time on JRE." I'm like, "Man, I seen that on it. That's a beautiful work of art, right?"
It's very pretty.
Very pretty. Good painting.
Yeah, so we're all out of our lanes. It's with something. Every person who's an expert is out of their lanes with a lot of things.
But there's a difference, and this is like what you alluded to it a minute ago, where it's like there's a difference between saying we know for a fact and we're not sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, a common atheist argument, if you talk like Richard Dawkins, he'll say, the minute that a scientist says God did it, they're not worth a fuck to me in the lab because they're not working anymore. They're like, I've got the answer. But that's the same thing as the science is settled. If you say the science is done, we know for a fact. You
can't say that.
Well, you're no longer worth a fuck to me in the lab.
Science is not settled when you don't have all the information in the universe.
And exactly, since we never will.
Yeah. Well, maybe we will.
Yeah.
It's a big weekend. Get in on the action of the big game and UFC 312 at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC. The men's middleweight and women's strawweight titles will be on the line in the co-main events of UFC 312. And of course, pro football is crowning a champion at the big game. Just getting started? Pick a fighter or a team to win this weekend. Go to DraftKings app and make your pick. That's all there is to it. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code Rogan. That's code Rogan for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. It's a big weekend only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Maybe we won't, but maybe our future people will.
Future selves, yes.
Yeah, I mean, what we're looking at is a mystery. And Egypt, to me, is one of the most phenomenal of all the mysteries, one of the most fascinating, because whatever happened, however long ago, those people in Africa did something that no one's been able to do since.
Yeah.
And they did it in a way that defies our understanding, not just of what they could do back then, but of what people could ever do, including right now.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said, like, that you can't see about ancient Egypt that's amazing. Like, the Bronze Age collapse. You've heard of that, right? And the Sea Peoples. Egypt was like the big power that survived. Like all these other big powers, they were destroyed. They were crushed. They lost everything. Now, Egypt got smaller, but it survived. It wasn't until the Greeks came along that it was, I mean, they'd been conquered off and on, but it wasn't until the Greeks came along that they were truly subjugated. And that's
thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
And by the time the Greeks showed up, that shit was so old that you look on the Osirion, they say that there's graffiti that's like the sacred geometry shit that was Hermeticism that was popular in Greece. So they're seeing Hermeticist stuff with the sacred geometry on it. And that's like, thousands of years later. Their minds are blown the same as their ours are today.
Wow.
And that's really fucked when you think about Alexander the Great going there and tripping balls on the same shit we do, right? Going, that's crazy, man.
One of my favorite quotes is that Cleopatra was born closer to the age of the iPhone than she was to the construction of the pyramids.
Yes, and that's
when you think about it that way, you're like, wait, what? For real? That's just the conventional dating of the age of the pyramid, which is much discussed and debated.
Very much.
And probably should be. It really probably should be. I know people want to point to carbon dating, but the problem with that is that we know that people resurface things and they do touch-ups. In fact, they're doing touch-ups right now, ill-advised, in my opinion, on the base of the Sphinx, where they've covered the feet. I think that's horrible.
It's terrible. I should have airdropped this to Jamie. I'll send it to him in a second. There's a image that I've got of that was just sent to me that's pretty amazing. There's a wall of one of the magazines in one of the pyramids that has a bunch of those vases in it, and this wall is like that collapsed, and the magazine is the name for a room. Anyway, they reconstructed this room. They reconstructed the wall, and it's got a piece of one of those vases in the fucking wall, like right in the rubble that makes up the wall. And I could not. I don't even have it saved. I'm sorry. Let me grab it real quick. Sorry, I should have done this before.
You're one of those dudes who use that tiny little phone. Look at that little thing.
I'm an old guy.
Is that the iPhone mini? Is that what that is? Or is that the SE or something like that?
Yeah, the SE, I think. Something like that.
How long's the battery life on that? 20 minutes?
14. 20 minutes is about 30 extra than I get. My son actually, he wanted an iPhone so bad. I got him an iPhone, had it for 2 years, and he's like, can I please have an Android? I'm so tired of having to charge my phone twice a day at school. Okay.
Well, the new iPhones last forever. The new iPhones. Well, I think the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra and the X24 Ultra have the longest battery life in comparison to iPhone. Like, they do those tests where they play like the Avengers, and they'll play it like nonstop on a loop to see which battery dies out quicker.
Oh yeah,
the Androids last longer.
Well, that makes sense.
But not by much. Like, you have to be a total psycho to go. I have an Android. I have a Galaxy S24 Ultra, and I have an iPhone. I've never had one of them run out of batteries. If you charge it in the morning, you have to be a total psycho to have no battery life at the end of the day. You should go to a doctor. Like, you have a real phone addiction.
The only time I ever had that problem recently was when I went to the Met. I went to the Met Museum in New York, and that was I was blown away by the artifacts and stuff, and ended up like basically burning my phone into the ground in order.
Just taking pictures? Yeah, you got a dead battery, son.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that batteries work at all, which one of the things I wanted to bring up to you was the Baghdad Battery.
Yeah.
Do you think that's real? Was that what that was, or is there some debate? Let's tell people what it is. The Baghdad Battery.
It's a clay pot. There's a number of them. They're clay vessels. They have a copper and lead inside of them, and the way that the cap is and stuff, you could potentially fill them with orange juice or something like that, a minor acid, and get an electric charge from it. Now, it wouldn't be much of one, but you could do it. And that's something that's worth noting right there is that you can, this has been, archaeologists have determined that, well, yeah, I mean, we don't like to admit it, but yes, these potentially could have been batteries. So, like, there was a guy that did debunking on it that's a popular YouTuber, and another archaeologist came around and kind of slapped him around a little bit, and he had to admit, he's like, okay, yeah, I didn't do my research good.
So this is the Baghdad Battery?
Yes.
What is the conventional explanation for what these things are?
The conventional explanation is that they're pots. They really don't have, like, a good, solid debunking of it, like, despite what it says there on the screen.
But because of what, I mean, this is not speculative, right? Because of what the actual materials are, if you filled it with a minor acid, it would conduct electricity.
Yes,
so it does work.
Yeah, it wouldn't make a lot, but it would make a little.
Like how much is a little? Like enough to power a toothbrush?
I don't think that much, but I know that the reports anyway was that a guy was able to make a very minor electroplating with it, and that would be the kind of thing that would be most likely applications, because other stuff requires serious.
Right. So like plating things with gold and stuff like that. Interesting. So the craziest theory of all, for sure, is the Christopher Dunn. The Christopher Dunn theory about the actual pyramid itself. He believes it's a massive power plant. Mm-hmm. And he believed that they were using some sort of chemicals and a certain frequency, like vibration, to generate hydrogen with all the chambers and all. And, you know, the way he describes it, it sounds very compelling, because I don't know what he's talking about. He might be making it all up, right? So the way he's saying it sounds so interesting. I've never heard anybody try to break down whether or not what he's saying makes sense, though.
Well, now I like Chris. I get along with him well. I talk to him on the phone probably a couple times a month. And he knows that I disagree with him. The thing that right off the bat, as an electrician, the first thing that stands out to me is the claim of getting piezoelectricity from the blocks, which piezoelectricity is the electricity you get from like a quartz crystal when you stress it. So like your watch or a charcoal igniter for a grill, right? The igniter is just a piece of quartz that they pop it with a little spring and a stick when you pop it, and it's got a piece of metal on each side and wires, and that harnesses the charge. That's the first thing, is each one of the quartz crystals in those big limestone blocks would have to have a piece of metal around it and wires coming off of it, or some way of harnessing the electricity. There's tons of natural electricity happens all the time, right? But you have to harness it in order to do something with it.
Is this just our understanding of how to use electricity, and could there potentially be something that we missed?
Well, there's definitely stuff we don't know about electricity. I mean, we'll start there. There's clearly things we don't know about it. We still have guys working on the shit all the time, and they're making better and better semiconductors and whatnot all the time. But having said that, maybe, but at that point, we're kind of like, my thinking on that is if we're going to say this is a technological thing and here's the way we get there, and then it's like, well, but we can't really do this. Well, couldn't it be something else? Well, at that point, why say that why build a technological story from what we have? Why not just make shit up?
Also, it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Because if you have the technology to turn that thing into a gigantic electrical generator, where did you get the technology to build it?
Yeah.
Like, what do you use? If this is the first one, if you figured, so that means you made more of these to make electricity or some other form of power. You did something. And that's what to me is so amazing about this, that no one can really look at it and go, oh, this is simple.
No,
you know?
Even if it's a tomb alone, even those guys have to admit that it's not simple, right? But when you look at it from a potentially technological angle, I mean, Chris had put a lot of work into his theory. It's not, and it is intricate, and he's a very intelligent person.
Yeah.
He is really, he's so smart that when I talk to him, I feel like I'm talking to a guy a bit smarter than me, right?
Yeah.
He's intelligent, but I don't agree with him on some of these things, and that's really, I think that's one of the reasons he likes me is because I'll be chill about it and just be, I'm like, yeah, you fucking charlatan.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and that's one of the things that I really do enjoy about your videos. When you disagree about something, you're very cordial about it. And I think that's important because, I've talked about this many times, but it's a real flaw with human beings. We attach ourselves to ideas, and we defend those ideas as if we're defending our worth as people. And it's stupid. And if you're wrong about something, it's just information. It should just be an idea. It shows far more about your flaws if you're willing to defend ideas that are clearly inaccurate.
I couldn't agree with you more there. Thanks for the compliment, by the way. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. It's a complete mess. And especially when it's science. It's where archaeology really can piss me off because these guys, there's a lot of it that's just made up stuff, right? It's one thing to say, we know for a fact this was carbon dated to X and blah. It's another thing to say this looks like that, therefore it's this. That's the same. The guys say that about all kinds of shit, right? Oh, these stones look like pillows, ergo they must be concrete. Well, it's like, here, Jamie, could you show that stupid image with the anime face on it? I'm using this one to drive that point home that the pareidolia is not just because it looks like something does not fucking mean that.
The pareidolia?
Yeah, pareidolia is when you see something in the clouds or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Just because something looks like something doesn't mean that this is the way to suss what a fucking ancient artifact is.
Oh, this one is the image of the eyes of Horus. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
And then, so there's a lot of weird speculation as to what that means, right? And some people think it means the pineal gland.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about that. Agreed. But my point is, obviously, we can't just assume that, because it looks like some anime girl, they were ancient Egyptians.
Of course.
Were all, but that's
one of the best ones is that the image of someone holding up something that either is a basket or looks like some sort of frequencies are emanating from some device.
Yeah, that one's interesting.
Yeah, like maybe it's a basket. It doesn't look like a basket though. It looks like you're trying to indicate something.
Yeah, it does. It does look like they're trying to, at the very least, highlight.
There's the other ones with is long phallus-looking tubes that seem to be some sort of energy source or something.
Well, a lot of them have that like pyramid shape on their crotch, right? A lot of them, just like this big straight, and it's not. It doesn't look phallic, but I mean, it kind of implies it, but it implies almost like it's symbolism for something, right?
Those long tube ones. See if you could find those. How would you describe that? Like if he's going to search for it.
Like energy emanating from it.
Right.
I mean, this is one of the hardest things about this is trying to find.
Bam, he found it.
Oh, damn. Oh, so then there are lights. That's derp.
Yeah. So like, what the hell's that?
That's some people think that's an actual light bulb. That's a bong to the left. Some people think that's a light bulb.
Well, like, what is that supposed to be? What the hell is that supposed to be? It looks like a serpent inside of it.
Yeah, it's there. The mainstream thing is that it's like a symbol of life, and like that's I forget which plant that is, but
what's that thing above it
lotus.
too? What are those little? What the hell's that?
Oh, it looks like writing of some sort, but I'm not sure what it says.
That's one of my main hopes for AI, that AI will get so sophisticated that it can start deciphering these things in a more meaningful way, in a way where you could use, these large language models. Like if we get like some, like they have the Rosetta Stone, and the Rosetta Stone allowed them to decipher a lot of the ancient hieroglyphs. If they could get some sort of much more comprehensive analysis of what they were trying to say with this stuff.
That would be nice.
Yeah. If it's even possible. I mean, I'm just guessing.
Well,
Dendera light.
It might be something that they can pull off. It's AI is a tough one. You'd have to ask Elon. That's more his neck of the woods than mine. But
so it's it references part of the Egyptian creation myth.
Yes, the water lily or the lotus flower was it that came out of that.
It's so weird.
It is. Their iconography is weird. That's one of the reasons I was taking so many pictures at the Met. It was just like it's so many things are just weird, just fucking weird, man.
Yeah.
You just look at it, you're like, this does not.
It's so old. So old and so weird. It's like we don't even know what their language sounded like, which is also amazing.
Yeah, it is.
It's like I just of all the places in the world where I could go back in time and observe, just somehow undetected. If you get some sort of a sphere of time that could place you in a place where you wouldn't disturb anything, but you could observe. That's what I like. What was going on?
Yeah, well, how'd they do that?
What did it look like? What
Yeah.
did their culture look like? What did the people look like when they were going about their daily tasks? We used to think it was slaves that built the pyramid. Now they think, no, they were skilled workers.
Yeah.
And they think that based on what their diet was and they were eating good food, and these people were well taken care of, that were involved in working around that area. So like, who were they? What was it all about?
Yeah, that's one of the things that when they say that it's not slaves that built it, that kind of makes me chuckle, because we know that they had well-fed people that worked there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the only people that worked there. I mean, if you go down to construction over here, you're going to have a guy that's eating at Zip or eating at freaking Burger King or whatever, and you're going to have another guy who's eating a $300 lunch, and they're going to be working the same job site.
Right. Good
so,
point.
but
Also, probably a lot of them didn't want to work there, and they were forced into it, which makes you a slave. If you pay slaves well, they're still slaves.
They're still slaves.
If you kill them when they leave, they're slaves.
That's right.
It's like you have a job to do no matter what you want to do. Oh, you want to become a musician? Fuck off. Go push that rock.
Push the rock and push it some more. Oh, you know what that one is? Another.
We're never going to stop being fascinated by the people of the past that we don't understand. And I think, again, the best example of that is Egypt.
Yeah, and that's where, like we were talking about how the archaeology and the archaeologists and pseudo guys will argue with each other so much about, and it gets so bad-blooded about it. It's like, man, I talked about this a little bit last time, but there's really, as I see it, as two distinct like halves of the human psyche at work in this regard. You can almost see it, the distinction in the way that scientists tend to be antisocial. They're not, and it may not be antisocial, might not be the right word, but they're just a little fucking weird, man. They're the kind of guys that they dress weird, they talk weird, they act weird, they just come across fucking weird.
You talking about Flint Dibble?
I'm talking about all scientists in general. But yes, he would be one of them, but he's not the only one. Like John Hoops is a great example of this too. If you watch him, the way he carries himself, the way he talks, he's just fucking weird. And look at Einstein. You watch that guy. He carried himself fucking weird.
Yeah.
But
my friend Chris Williamson has a very interesting take on that I think is very accurate. He said, if you expect regular people to get extraordinary results, you're being silly.
Yeah,
you're going to get weird people that are going to get weird results.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Now, I'm more scientifically literate, I think, than most of the people that I know. So, and I kind of feel like Shane Gillis jokes about being nicked by the Down syndrome thing. I feel like I was nicked by that antisocial thing. I walk into a bar, and if I don't know anybody, my first instinct is just to go sit in the corner and watch. No,
well, that's part of the problem with being intelligent. You're worried that you're going to get dragged into a dumbass conversation, and it won't be stimulating. It's the opposite of stimulating. It's brutal.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you sit in the corner and watch, well, then you look like the weird old guy creeper in from the fucking corner. So you just go sit at the bar and talk to people. But I'm aware that I can be a little off that way.
Right.
But these guys, they're. Every now and again, one of them will show up that's like a Carl Sagan. Now, this guy, he's just a regular Joe. He could talk to everybody, and he happens to be a fucking great scientist. He got a lot of shit from his colleagues for that. He got a lot of shit from his colleagues for taking the time to talk to the peasants.
Yeah.
But and the way he did it wasn't abrasive. If somebody asked him about aliens, if they're like, man, what do you think was the aliens were up to over on Alpha Centauri? What kind of technology do you think they have? And that's almost his initial response would be like, he's thinking, how the fuck am I supposed to know?
Right.
But then Alpha Centauri is about 1 billion years older than our star. And so if you were to assume that they were around for 1 billion years longer than us and had the same stuff, and so he would entertain them. Mm-hmm. And then he would do things, he would interject a little bit of science. When they would ask a question, he would answer it and make sure that there was a little science in that, so that people that really didn't give a fuck about learning about the science, they just want to talk about UFOs.
Yeah.
spoonful of sugar and the fucking medicine went down. You're walking out with some science in your head, bitch, like it or not.
Yeah, that's being a science educator, right? Which is very important.
And very rare for
Yeah.
them to be good. It's very rare for them to be good.
Yeah. The have you seen the recent images that they got from Mars of that big square? Mm-hmm. What the fuck is that?
It's one of those things where I was talking to Jamie just before the show. It is a bad day to be a professional skeptic. I'm telling you what. If you've been you're living the last 20 years poo-pooing all the aliens and UFO shit and whatnot, man, oh man, is it a rough day for you? Because if that same shit was LiDAR from the South American forest, you'd be like, yeah, there's probably a village there. That makes sense.
This is even more clear than LiDAR.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
It's
Because
super
it's above
square.
the surface.
Yeah, it's
Jamie,
super
pull a
square.
photo of it up. This is super recent, right?
Yeah, just a few days ago.
Yeah.
They
This
found it recently. I think it's been online for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
Oh, so is it that there's a mass of data that they scanned from the surface and then someone just detected this recently?
I think someone just found it on the website.
It might be one of those things. It's like, who is going to go by hand over each one of these images? And I mean, you're dealing with the entire surface of a planet that's, what is it, like 3/4 of the size of Earth?
I think that might even be a little small. But
Smaller than that?
Yeah, I think
Or
it's
larger than
I
that?
think it's I think it's a little larger, but I could be wrong.
Well, so something smaller than Earth,
Yeah.
but bigger than the moon, and you're going to go over the entire surface of it.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I think they think the rough estimates of this square are between 300 meters and multiple kilometers. They don't know how big it is. It's because it's hard to get a reference.
Yeah.
So I think the estimate is at the very smallest, it's several hundred meters across. So this square, it's really crazy because it's right angle, right angle, right angle, right angle.
Yeah, and doesn't look to be very asymmetrical
This
either.
one says like they added that square so
Yeah.
you can see it better. It's like superimposed on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is the original image. Just this alone,
Yeah,
you're like, what the fuck
Like I
is
said,
that?
if you were to tell me that was a LiDAR picture from South America, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah. It's just too convenient that it makes a square. It just seems so weird.
It is.
And then there's another image that goes along with this that's even more bizarre. Maybe not even more bizarre, but it's like almost looks like a cone structure that's emanating from the surface, like surrounded by a circle.
Yeah.
Have you seen
I
that
haven't
one?
seen that one, but I've seen people talking
See if you
about
can find
a
that
few
one,
things
Jamie.
like that.
Just had that one. I lost it now.
Yeah, it's real weird stuff, and no one has like the face on Mars was real interesting. I got really into Richard Hoagland and all his Cydonia stuff for a while, but he was making some very bizarre measurements. Like if you go 1/2 of the distance between this and 3/4 of the way between that, it's exact number that it takes what do you? But don't do that. How about don't do that?
Don't do that.
How about don't just fucking arbitrarily look for some sort of.
I did that in a video once, kind of being a dick, making fun of the idea that there's all this data encoded in the vases. I have no problem with the idea of the vases being like, proof that these guys were, they're definitely fucking exacting and whatnot. But the idea that they've like hidden data.
Is that the Cydonia face?
I guess, and it's right by the square.
What? Really?
Supposedly.
Wow.
I guess, right? Is that what that's saying?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh my God! It says the giant
what-
square structure, just a short hike from the legendary face on Mars. Holy shit!
That's crazy.
How do they miss that? They were concentrating on the face, which is like, it might be a face, might not be. To me, the original images, look really wild. But then the images afterwards were like, oh, no, it's just the weird light hitting it in a certain way. And you can find plenty of structures on Earth that will do a similar thing. But
That one. I saw this too.
what is that?
This weird shit they're finding, like sticking out.
Yeah, you find weird shit in nature. That's not as compelling as the other one. There was something that looked like a cone. So the actual image when they got, what is that dirty stuff you got at the bottom, Jamie? Horrible
Hey, this is
feed that
just-
you.
I just typed in Mars
Yeah,
photo.
but terrible.
Time for a bathroom break.
This is Twitter.
What's wrong with
Twitter
you?
works.
I know it is kind of wild that Twitter has like hardcore porn on it.
Yeah, it always has.
Yeah, very weird. I'm not complaining. Do whatever you want. I'm all for doing whatever you want. But this original tract of images, it's a long one, and if you scroll through it, one of them is some very bizarre-looking cone-like structure. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is weird.
Very weird. Like, what's that? I mean, it could
Oh.
be just a mountain,
It
but it
could,
looks like
yeah.
a zit.
It does. It is.
And the fact that it's so close to that other thing, that's what's
There's the
screwy.
face, too.
Yeah. The
They're all in
faces
line
in
with
it,
each
they're
other.
all, yeah. So it's all this one area that's been studied for a long time as being that there's a bunch of different things there that you could interpret as being some sort of a structure.
Well, Jimmy was sharing that video in response to this, of Buzz Aldrin saying that there's like a
Monolith.
monolith on the moon.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that before. I mean, I embarrassingly hadn't. I've always been a little out of the UFO side of things. I've always watched it, but always, just a little bit. I'm usually looking at pyramids and
Wouldn't
shit.
you like to feed Buzz Aldrin some mushrooms and say, "Tell me what you know.
Dude, yeah.
Tell me what you really know.
I
Tell
like
me what you know.
I
Did
like
you
the-
really go?
I like
First
the
of all,
clip when he punches that fucking dude. That calls
Buzz. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that guy.
You're a
Bart Sabro.
liar. And whap.
Yeah. He needs to work on his punch. Really
Yeah.
had a clean shot and didn't do much
Hey, it's a
damage.
zero gravity training.
His bones are deteriorated from being in space for so long. That is a wild thing that does happen to them. It takes forever for your body to get back to normal.
Yeah, it's
when you're up
crazy.
there for a while.
It's crazy to think that like that stress is needed. Like if you don't have those kinds of stresses in your life, that like your body just
Yeah, which fucks up the whole Superman myth. Because Superman came over here, his body would deteriorate.
yeah.
After a while, he'd be just like us,
Poor guy.
right? It wouldn't work. You can't
Wouldn't
just
work.
fly. But obviously, cartoons,
No X-ray
comic
vision, none
books.
of it.
Yeah, all those things. The ability to go so fast you could spin time backwards. Remember, he spun the earth back the opposite
Save
direction.
Lois Lane.
Like,
Yes.
okay. It's like-
Water goes up the hill.
Yeah, if you could somehow or another make sense out of the possibility that a civilization existed on Mars and was wiped out millions and millions of years ago, that would change the way we think about everything. And I feel like that square is one step closer to like really needing a comprehensive analysis of what's there.
Yeah.
Because before it was just like, oh, it's a lifeless planet, but at one time it had an atmosphere. Interesting. Oh, they found frozen water. Oh, interesting. Well, they actually found liquid water now.
Yeah.
More interesting. Now they found a big square. Okay. What's that?
Yeah.
That one to me is the what's that.
And this is where, in my mind, this is where that skeptics versus dreamers thing gets really fucked, because the answer should be the same for everybody. Let's just next expedition. Let's poke around a little up there, right?
Yeah.
Let's find out the evidence. But the answer is always, from one side it's definitely this, from the other side it's definitely not completely, but that to the point where we don't get to draw a parallel with that Yonaguni, the site,
Yeah.
the underwater site that Graham Hancock likes to talk about. The skeptics are certain that it's a geological formation. Most of the other people are not. We need work done. That's the clear fucking answer is just put some money at it, put some bodies on it, and until then, the answer in my mind is when somebody asks me, what do I think about Yonaguni? I say, well, it's interesting. It's probably been eroded for a long time, so it might be man-made and just looks naturally. It might be natural. We need more evidence before I'm going to hang my hat anywhere.
Right.
And that's
Which is very reasonable.
and in all honesty, it should be the scientific position. It should be the position that the scientists are espousing. If they wanted to have credibility in this sphere, they should be the ones towing that line, and then let the pyramidiates all be certain. And this is how we know it was. And then the
Right.
scientists can look, but instead
Right.
they get in the mud and act just like everybody else.
They also stall progress with their arrogance. They
Big
stall.
time.
They stall progress by dismissing any possibility. Like, what are those ones? Is it near the Bahamas? Those enormous stones that are on the floor, the surface of the ocean.
The Bimini Road.
That's right.
Yeah.
That one's weird.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't think that's weird, like, come on.
Well, and they're right that it's. I would agree with a geologist that there's a really good chance that it's just beach rock. However, we can do work.
Yeah.
This is the stuff. It's like the people that if you say that the rocks are geopolymers and Sacsayhuaman or whatever,
Right.
It's like there's no reason for us to argue about this, man. We just fucking do some work.
Right. The Bimini Road was really interesting. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that they find under the water that makes you think, okay, what is this? And the Yonaguni thing, like, if that's the case, see, that to me, that could easily be natural.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at it right there, that easily could be natural. They're not uniform enough for bells to go off.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But that one lower right, that one right below that, Jamie, right below your cursor to the right, that one freaks me out a little. That seems like those were stacked.
Yeah, it does. It seems very much like that.
And when you're dealing with, if you want to go really crazy with the John Anthony West version of it, which is like 30,000 plus years, that's probably what you would have left over.
Yeah, you're accurate there. That's there's a thought tool that archaeologists use called the Silurian hypothesis, and Silurian's like this Doctor Who bad guy that was went into hibernation. They're lizards. They went into hibernation like before the dinosaurs died out, and then they wake up one day and there's all these monkeys running around on their planet, and so. But that's the Doctor Who thing, right? But the Silurian hypothesis is basically a thought tool for archaeologists and historians to say, well, if there was an advanced civilization on Earth 10 million years ago, what will we need to find in order for it to exist? And or what would we find now, 10 million years later? And the answer is usually like radioactive material. It's like 10 million years, man. You might find a couple of bones, but the odds of finding anything that's going to actually prove that they had technology, not much.
That's also the problem with the idea of this very sophisticated construction methods of the pyramids that were using some sort of advanced technology. Like, what would, if John Anthony West is correct, and he's talking about 30,000+ years, what would be left after 30,000 years? Well, certainly not much metal.
No. Oh, no, that stuff would be looted right away.
And even if it wasn't, what would be actually left of it if it was just like sitting on the ground?
Be rotted and melted.
Yeah, to nothing.
The video that you sent me yesterday, the one with the stone nubs, they talked about holes.
Mm-hmm.
All those, I can't say for all of the sites, but like the Colosseum and stuff, they used metal to bond the bricks together and the concrete together in places. So years later, when the city's under attack and they need metal to make swords, they looted it. That's recorded.
That makes sense.
And it happened a lot in the Roman world. So
I'm glad you brought up the nubs.
Yeah.
Because the nubs, that was one of the videos that I watched of yours yesterday, where for what we're talking about, folks, is there's many places like Machu Picchu. There's what other places have nubs?
Oh, all over the place.
Even that Montana thing,
even
which
in
is
Montana,
weird.
You'll see them on Egyptian sarcophagi. You'll see them on the casings, unfinished casing stones at the bottom of Menkare's pyramid. You'll see them basically at almost every megalithic site on the planet has some nubs somewhere. All the ones, if they're finished blocks, you'll usually find nubs somewhere.
And do you think that it's possible that those nubs were used to hoist things up and move them into place?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a technique called a lifting boss that's used to lift big things like that. But there's a couple of issues with that being the only reason that they're used. For one, a lot of times they're small like that, and they wouldn't really do you much good. For two, a lot of times we see them like on the lids of a coffin, for example, which you wouldn't want to leave it there afterwards because you don't want to facilitate the next guy to be able to pop the coffin lid, right? So
you say that they're small, but if you were trying to place something exactly and you were lifting it up from the bottom, the only way you would be able to do that is if you had something like a nub sticking on the outside of it.
in order to catch a rope or keep it from walking
right.
or something like that.
Or
yeah.
whatever it is, boards
Yep.
or whatever you're using to lift that and place it into position.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's like I say, there's they are lifting bosses are a thing. They're not. It's not unknown. And there's a good possibility. I mean, there's not a good possibility. Quite certainly, quite frequently, these were used for that.
And interesting also that the bottom stones don't have them.
Mm. That's the fact. A lot of people do bring up a good point. I didn't talk about it in my video, but it's an interesting point. Is that why did they get left? Now, like that one around the windows there. Like to me, that's pretty clearly to the left, Jamie. Sorry, that one right there. Yeah, the one's got that one's pretty clearly to me. Like that's functional, right? I mean, they're
right. That looks like maybe like had an iron gate attached to it or something,
veranda or some shit,
yeah.
right? Smoking balcony. But some of them, on the other hand, they look a lot more questionable. Okay, like
those are odd.
Yeah, thank you.
They're
just
really
they're just fucking weird, and and sometimes you see them on things that don't, like the stone was carved in the ground and they left these on.
Sorry, Jamie, to the one a little bit higher with the red tint to it, upper right-hand side. Upper right above that. Yeah, click on that. Like, that is so strange.
See, and now, like on stones like these, you don't really need a lifting boss. Okay, you got like that. Look at that stone that's on the right there. That's all the one to the left. That guy there. You could just use that lip on the corner, right below the cursor. You could use that lip for a lifting boss. You could tie a rope around that thing and push it wherever the fuck you wanted.
Right, but if you wanted to get it to sit down without having to pull out whatever's underneath it or whatever underneath it getting crushed, wouldn't you want something to assist you like that little nub?
No, but again, you could just pop it into the corner on the side and do the same thing.
Right, but if you were doing that as a method for each individual stone, and some of them you couldn't pop in like that.
Yeah, okay, I can go with that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it would be a technique that you would use to hoist these things into position. Does anybody have an explanation of what these things are?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the lifting boss is what the mainstream explanation is. They say that all of them were for that. And there's, there's it's the ubiquity that really makes it different to me. It's like, and the popping up on different sides of the ocean, and that's where it just seems kind of weird. It's like for it to show up that's looking so similar, used so similar all over the place, left behind when they're done, that's kind of weird too.
Right, they didn't polish them down.
They didn't polish them down, yeah. The rest of the walls, a lot of times, I mean, the stones are fitted so well together. Clearly they knew how to make these stones flat as fuck. Why is this part still got this big tit hanging off of it? It's just, it's weird. Despite the title of my video saying the true purpose, that's just clickbait. Nobody knows. There's the best mainstream explanation would be lifting bosses. The most common alternate history explanation is usually like it's like a leftover from the concrete being pulled out, like the guy in the video was saying, or it's like if you have a bag of concrete and it's just like the one little spot that kind of seeps out. I don't think that they're from geopolymers, but that's...
Yeah, I've heard the concrete explanation too, as far as the stones in the Great Pyramid, but
yeah, no. We can test these things. That's where some of the guys that claim that they're everything's geopolymers will pretend that we can't test things, but the reality is we absolutely can test that for that kind of shit. I mean, it's not difficult at all, actually. So the problem is, and this is where it gets, like you said, the archaeologists stand between things. The problem is that in certain places in the world, like Peru, for example, and Bolivia, it's fucking hard to get. Look at those alien bodies right now in Peru, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we've been looking at them.
Oh, I'm sure you have. And the scientists keep saying they're real. But the only fucking scientists I ever see weighing in on them are Peruvian scientists. It's like, well, okay, let some people from around the world. Oh, no. Fuck you guys. These are us. All right, man. That's...
But is that like a hyper-exaggerated version of the Boneyard?
It could be.
Deeper implications?
It could be, but we've seen a lot of the same kind of stuff with them with... They have a problem in Peru with archaeology and corruption with the money. Like, I don't know if you saw my video on the elongated skulls, but I
didn't.
Okay, that video I just covered basically how those things came in these big bundles. Okay, they'd get these grave bags, and there'd be a body in there, and so they harvested a couple, I think it's like 600 of these bundles, and every time they just get opened and willy-nilly shit get moved around. Rockefeller ends up trading for a few of them and to finance because they didn't have finances to store these things properly.
So Rockefeller got some of those heads?
Oh yeah. He and we don't know how many exactly. He reportedly just 4. But like he gives the money to these people to like restore all these mummies, and the first thing that they do is they restore a bunch of textiles that other mummies that they don't have anymore were like packed in and shit. It's just even all the way up into the 60s, an anthropologist opened like 70 some odd bundles, recorded what he found in 4 of them, and put the rest back on the fucking shelf. They've been stealing artifacts and selling them on the open market. And it's all about money.
So really rich people, like some billionaire guy goes, I want a mummy. What do I got to get to? I want a mummy room in my castle.
I want one with a head. I want one with a really weird head. Which one's got the best head? Let's open 60. Okay. That's just the Cusco tunnels. They just... This one's so fucked. They just announced this January Archaeologists have discovered that there are tunnels running under Cusco in Peru. They connect the Temple of the Sun to the Fortress of Sacsayhuaman and some other places around there. Oh, this is crazy. It's going to be great, man. We did all this LiDAR. It's going to be amazing. Amazing discovery. Well, fucking Brian Forrester uploaded a video like 11 years ago of him going on a tour of those tunnels. You could pay a guide 20 years ago to go on a tour of those tunnels. The Spanish were writing about them in the 1600s and the late 1500s. The only reason that we didn't investigate these tunnels is because in the 30s was when archaeology started becoming a thing and going down there and checking out those skulls and shit. And at the exact same time, Madame Blavatsky and Edgar Cayce was like, those tunnels that are supposed to be down there, I bet they were built by the Atlanteans. And so ever since then, archaeologists have poo-pooed it. There was a guy in the 2000s he's an Atlantis hunter. He did ground-penetrating radar in early 2000s, found those tunnels. They rejected his work. He had a priest that witnessed those tunnels, has been down in them. He was rejected out of hand. But that's okay because 25 years later we found it. And I promise they didn't steal or sell anything in the last 100 years. That the world knew that these things existed. Rich people were going down there and throwing money around, and there was zero safeguards. It's just like so. To circle back to the UFO or the aliens, there, it's like I have a real problem with that shit in Peru because I can't. It's just so tainted. It's so corrupt.
It's so weird too. I mean, I love looking at it. I wish it was real. But that to me is always the problem whenever it comes to alien stuff. I want it to be real. So that part of my brain, I have to go, hey, stupid. let's just because this is an X-ray doesn't mean this is legit. By the way, I can make you a fake X-ray pretty easy online these days. Yeah. It wouldn't be hard at all. But these X-rays are so compelling that if they are legitimate X-rays, if someone really did just piece this together with a bunch of random bones, what a fantastic job they did, because it doesn't look awkward at all. It looks real.
The thing about them that looks the fakest is just a photograph of the bodies themselves. Everything else looks fucking pretty legit.
Right, if the X-rays are real.
Yes.
And this is part of the problem. But the X-rays that they show, that they say are real, God, they look so cool. I mean, you see the three-fingered hands. You see the bones look similar to ours, but different. There's enough of it that's similar to a human being's, and it is some sort of a bipedal, hominid-like creature, whatever it is.
And we know, we know that humans existed with a bunch of other hominids on this planet for a long time, so it wouldn't be like, for us to discover a new species, of even if they weren't aliens, wouldn't be crazy.
If they were, way more advanced than us, but they got wiped out. That's... there's versions of us that aren't as good as us, that aren't here anymore. Yeah. Right? So we have Homo sapiens, Denisovans they didn't discover until a decade or so ago. Yeah. Right? So then there's a bunch of different versions of human beings that weren't as good as us. And we're the ones that maybe ones were better. Yeah. And maybe the ones that were better didn't make it. Yeah. Because we almost didn't make it a ton of times.
Yeah. And you could say, well, why did we... Some people would think at that point, why did we make it and the ones that were better not, if that's the case? But we're not in direct competition with each other to survive necessarily. It's also with Mother Nature and all these other things.
Sure.
And so, you just wrong place, wrong time, species gets wiped out. Sorry.
Yeah. What is this, Jamie?
I'm reading an article about the mummies right now, and this popped up.
Metallic plates have been found throughout other areas of the mummies' bodies, from the interior covering some of the bones to external attachments on the skin, forming a bifunctional implant with no signs of rejection. These polymetallic plates have been analyzed using a light-based measurement, revealing an alloy compound of copper, cadmium, osmium, aluminum, gold, and silver, he added. Notably, the silver has a purity of over 95%, which is rare in nature. Additionally, cadmium and osmium, relatively recent discoveries, are currently used in satellite communication and satellite structures. This is what they're telling us, though.
One of them was found. This
is a Daily Mail article? Yeah.
This is a Daily Mail article.
It is a Daily Mail article.
I said one was pregnant. I think that's the one.
Oh, yeah.
Yo.
Get in my belly.
They still fuck? That's kind of crazy. They don't have dicks. How's it pregnant? Right? Dude. Shouldn't they be farming that off to a test tube if they've gotten past intercourse?
Do it like octopi. And just...
The really weird ones were the X-rays of the body in that position, where you see all the skull and the way the skull is formed and the way the fingers are formed. It's very weird stuff.
It's a 3D reconstruction of one hand.
Yeah.
Wow.
Super weird stuff.
Yeah, it is pretty wild.
If it's real, but
Yeah.
if it's just somebody's art project, you fuckers.
I read that. So I read that the art project was the little small ones.
Yeah, the small ones
And the rest of them are
supposedly have been
not.
debunked.
Said that they have hundreds of them apparently.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. What do we have to give you? Trump, get on it. Tell Trump. You know what I'm saying?
Scrap that.
Turns out they're aliens.
We no longer want an expedition to Ethiopia. Scrap that one. We want the bodies.
Imagine. Well, we need a bunch of expeditions. We need answers, you know? We need someone who is like at a high position of the White House that's interested in this stuff.
That would be very nice, in
Yeah.
all honesty.
Like find one of them things, bring it to America, and let's do a live stream of scientists actually and analyzing it so it doesn't get gatekeeped at all.
Yeah.
We just get a chance to see, like, show the whole world what this is.
They did that with a couple of the bundles. They tried to with a couple of the bundles in the 50s. There was an anthropologist that opened up 2 of them on video. And when I was researching for my video, I found that those movie reels are lost. Nobody knows where they went. They just disappeared. Big fucking shock. There's a newspaper article that recorded what she found in one of them. That newspaper article is not in their archives. It just stinks. It just stinks. It's like I am
Gatekeeping.
not. Yeah, well, yeah. I'm not a conspiratorial type of person, but I'm not stupid either, right? It's a
Right.
pretty clear fucking conspiracy there.
So what was supposedly the synopsis of her article?
She was just talking about what she found inside of one of those mummy bundles with the elongated skulls and the artifacts that would be in it, the grave goods and stuff. And
The thing about the elongated skulls is that some of them have a larger capacity, which is interesting. So it's not simply like, because we know that there's a technique that they do with young children where they put boards on the side of their heads and they flatten their head down. You can actually form
Oh, yeah.
someone's head, but that's not necessarily what was being done here.
no, there's the kind of nuanced argument is that some of them were legitimate aliens or other species or whatever, and then some of them were people trying to emulate that with their
Right.
their own kids.
Right, like that it was a status symbol to have that elongated head, so people
Exactly.
tried to fake it and pretend. Maybe it was just a genetic anomaly, right? Like
Yeah.
some sort of bizarre, like we talked about this, the people that are born, there's a certain tribe in Africa where a bunch of them have only 2 toes, and they look like ostrich feet. Have
Oh,
you
wow.
seen that?
No, I haven't. That's crazy.
Jamie could find it. It's real weird. So it's some genetic anomaly that like a lot of people have there. It's not rare. There's a photo of a bunch of them sitting there with their feet up. Like, that's what their toes look
wow.
like. Yeah. And so there's quite a few people that have this genetic anomaly with their toes.
Wow.
Yeah. Very strange.
That is.
So they have 2 enormous toes. So their feet are completely different than ours.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's quite a few people that have that. Now, you could imagine that a similar genetic anomaly could take place with the shape of the skull.
Absolutely.
If you could develop people that were a bunch of them, where it's a gene that can spread, like you can pass it on, that you could have something where people had a larger head.
Yeah.
And a weird shaped head.
Yeah, that would, and if it offered any sort of advantage at all, and you might think, well, how could that be? It's obviously a problem. But if it offered any sort of advantage, like the Galapagos Islands, right? Mm-hmm. The iguanas there that go down and swim in the water and eat moss off the bottom, they all got webbed feet. So it stands to reason to me that whatever happened that isolated Galapagos and made it a shitty place to try to find food for an iguana, you got one of these iguanas, it's a little mutant McNugget running around, and he's got webbed toes already, and he's like, fuck, man, nobody wants to hang out with me because I look all weird. But then this happens, and all of a sudden he's the only guy that can consistently get food. It's, that kind of disadvantage turned advantage overnight kind of thing. So
well, those weird adaptations take place quicker than they thought. And a good example of that is the Congo. There's parts of the Congo where there was an amazing BBC documentary about it. It was a multiple disc DVD rather thing that I had back in the day. And this Congo documentary, one of the things they found was there's a lot of plains animals that got trapped in the Congo. So the Congo because of the change of the climate there, at one point in time, it was plains, so it was grasslands. So you have all these antelope and all these different animals that normally exist in these open, wide areas, but they're jammed into a rainforest now, and they've adapted. And one of the animals that adapted is the diker. So the diker is a small antelope that can swim underwater for as much as 100 yards and eats fish.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So this thing that lived out in the plains, like all the other little antelopes, now can fucking swim and dives underwater and can swim 100 yards underwater.
It's insane.
And eats fish.
That's insane.
So this weird adaptation that takes place just in the Congo,
Yeah.
which is just this like incredibly vital environment that so much diversity of life exists in.
That's weird. It's weird, but it's crazy. How ubiquitous those things can be. Like, Madagascar and the lemurs. Lemurs basically like have all these evolutionary niches in Madagascar filled in. Like, instead of a woodpecker, there's a lemur with a big ass fucking finger, and he tap 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 tap.
Really?
Yeah, if we can look that guy up if you want, Jamie.
Whoa.
Madagascar's got almost every major evolutionary niche is filled by a lemur.
Really?
Yeah, it's a fucking lemur island, man. It's just like the different kind of lemurs on Madagascar are all over the place. It's not every single one, but like woodpeckers. There's no fucking woodpeckers there. The insect-eating birds are not birds; they're lemurs.
Whoa.
The whole island is.
That's it.
Look at that.
Look at those fucking claws. How weird. That looks fake.
The eye.
The finger of death. The world's most demonic lemur is also its most endangered. Meet the creature with the ugliest finger on the planet. What does it look like, the full version of it? Whoa! Look at his eyes. What a cool-looking creature. Wow, that's a lemur.
Yeah.
That looks like something from, like, Lord of the Rings. That does not even look like a real creature.
Yeah, it's evolution's crazy that way, and it's like
whoa! Look at that little fucker.
You get a great example of like you probably heard them say that like the dinosaurs get wiped out and allowed mammals the opportunity to take over the planet. Like, otherwise, mammals would have just been a bunch of shrews running around in the grass, and that's that exact kind of thing. It's like that lemur ain't going to outcompete woodpeckers, but he don't have to. So he gets to take off and do his thing.
Because there are no woodpeckers there. Yeah, so something fills that niche.
Exactly. So it's that same kind of thing. We get to see it in, like you were talking about what's that name of that deer thing you were talking about?
The diker.
Diker.
It's an antelope,
Antelope, yes. That to become a underwater meat eater, that's quite a jump. But there's probably not many alligators down there doing that exact same job. I mean, not many things taking its spot. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to find a niche there. There wouldn't have been no food.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting. There's herds of antelope running through dense rainforest, running through puddles in the water and everything. Really crazy because they just sort of got trapped there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so insane. It's like the mountains that they have in the South America where they've got basically it's like the same as an island where it's like nothing can go down from a certain elevation. So like there's a bunch of things that live up in the mountains that are basically evolutionary isolated and have been for 10,000, 20,000 years. And so you get a bunch of goofy species that are only next mountain over they're a little bit different, next mountain over they're a little bit different, same as the finches that Darwin was chasing around in the early days.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting stuff. I can nerd out on all that shit for a long time. I love it.
But just the sheer variety of life forms that we know are real. And what's interesting is like things that are cryptic or, cryptozoology type deals, people are so dismissive of them. But I'm like, by God, there's so much that's real. There's so much that's real. Like one of my favorites is the little Hobbit man. Yeah. From the island of Flores, because that was dismissed forever. That was just nonsense until a couple decades ago. They're like, oh, hey, okay, we just found something that's like a little tiny person, a little 3-foot person that's not us. But it's bipedal, and it seems to have worked with tools and hunted.
It's funny how skeptical they get with this stuff. It's not even skeptical; it's cynical because clearly. We know that island dwarfism exists, which is where things get smaller or bigger on islands, depending, right? You might have some big-ass swans and some small elephants on an island.
Yeah, lizards get bigger, right?
Exactly. Smaller things tend to
Reptiles,
get bigger,
yeah.
and bigger things tend to get smaller. So if we know that's a thing, then why is it a problem to assume that would happen with humans or with hominids?
Right. We know what happens with elephants. They
Yeah.
have dwarf elephants on these islands.
And that's the kind of thing that honestly is almost sounds like religious thinking, not scientific thinking to me. It's like we're better and we're immune to all the same forces of nature. It's like a scientist should just be like, okay, man, it could be, right?
Yeah, it's just ego.
It's
ego. Ego works with everything in the wrong direction,
And
including science.
And well, that's to me that's kind of it's kind of fucked, because even though I know that those guys, like I was saying earlier, are socially awkward and probably emotionally stunted, quite frequently can't even suss their own feelings, but at the same time, it's like science is the whole fucking expedition, the whole undertaking, the whole reason you do it is to see clearly. And when trying to get rid of Joe has an opinion, Jamie has an opinion, Dan has an opinion, they're all different, but if we all see the same thing, we can be pretty sure that this is real. But if I see it different than you, than Jamie, well, now.
Yeah.
And so when they inject their ego heavily into it, political quite frequently nowadays, it's not fucking science anymore, man. You are defiling the thing that you set out to do, and you know you're doing it. So I get kind of
Let's just call it
worked up.
truth. Like truth is the most valuable thing if you're speaking openly about something. If you're talking about something publicly, truth is the most important thing. As soon as you are willing to violate truth to preserve something else, like your status, your ego, your place in the hierarchy of information, well, now I can't listen to you anymore because I know you're willing to lie.
You're a grifter. I mean,
Yeah, and obviously politics is the best example of that. I mean, especially today. I guess it's probably a good time to talk about this. There was a thing that came out recently. There was a book. There was some book about the Kamala Harris campaign where they talked about her getting on this show. And they said a bunch of things that weren't true. They talked to supposedly talked to like 150 different people about her and what happened with her coming on the show. I don't know if it's 150. A lot of people. They didn't talk to us, and which is kind of crazy. And which is like they didn't even ask. But they said things that just weren't true. One of the things they said that weren't true was that we lied about the day that Trump was coming on. No, we just didn't tell you that Trump was coming on. He was already booked a long time ago. This is how it worked. Trump was really easy to book, like super easy. We offered one day. He said yes. That was it. There was no, what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to be? Is it going to be edited? There was nothing. Yeah. What's the waiver? Here, give me that waiver. Sign it. It was so easy. So he was already booked. They never committed to doing the show. So all this talk, there was another thing they said that the reason why they did the Beyonce thing, the Beyonce event in Houston, was so that they could be in Texas to do my show. They never agreed to do the show. None of that's true. They never agreed.
That's fucked.
They also said that they sent someone down here to the studio to do a walkthrough of the set. That's not true. The Trump administration did. I mean, if they are trying to say that they, as in the entire federal government, well, I don't think the Trump, I guess the Secret Service is a part of the federal government. Maybe you can kind of get away with saying that because the Secret Service came down here for Trump and looked around that we sent someone down, but it was not. It was the Trump administration sent them down because they're the only ones that had a date to do the show. These people didn't have a date to do. They never agreed to do the show. This is really important. Even after Trump went on, they offered for me to come to D.C. and do a show with Kamala. But even then, it was the same deal. It was only like 45 minutes to an hour. And, it was not on my set. And I said that, look, he did it here. We should probably do it here. Like, if it's possible to do it here. Obviously, when he did it, it had an enormous result. I'm willing to do the same thing for her. I wanted to release both of them on the same day. This was my goal. I was even trying to figure out if there was a way that I could do it. And I even offered to do it late that night. So the night that Trump came on, I'm like, what if we do her, like when she's done in Texas, if she came here? But No one ever committed to doing it. This is like really important because they keep pretending that I lied or I did this or I did that. They never committed to doing it.
Well,
we went through, I've got a whole, we have all the receipts, by the way.
Of course.
I have a whole list of conversations that took place. They never said she was going to do it. So this whole idea that we fucked her over and then we fucked her over for Trump, incorrect. Just not true.
And she,
But I think it's someone
Sorry.
trying to cover their ass for the fact that she never did it, and if she did do it, it might have had a positive effect.
Yeah,
if her and I had a good time and we got along great, and she won over, the air quote young male vote, things could have been different. Who knows? So this guy's probably trying to cover his ass.
That's what I'm thinking too, is because the reaction to her not coming was like pretty big.
But they didn't commit to doing it. This is the thing. While this guy's saying like that we were difficult to deal with, not true. We were super easy. We made it real clear. But also, it's got to be the actual real show. It shouldn't be some fake version of it where I'm sitting in a conference room. Also, they wanted a stenographer in the room. They wanted staff in the room. Trump was just in here by himself.
Yeah.
Just me, him, and Jamie. That's it. For 3 hours. Like, they wanted to do everything. They wanted it very controlled, and they were really concerned that it wasn't going to be edited. So I don't think they ever really were sure they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Then once Trump did it, and it had this huge response, I think then it was like, what the fuck? What are we doing? He just did it. It's got 50 fucking million views. This is so stupid. Why didn't we do it? And so then there was, even then, when they offered to do it in D.C., my manager asked, is she committed to doing this? If I bring this to Joe, no, she hasn't committed to doing this. Have you brought this to her? Like, they wouldn't even say whether or not she had expressed willingness to do it or whether they were trying to convince her to do it. We know for sure there were some people that were supposedly on her staff that were against her doing it. They thought it was because it's a bunch of wokesters. They're basically in a cult. You have a like if you're willing to go on Fox News. You talked to, what's that guy's name, Brett Breyer?
Yeah.
Where they cut that off after 20 minutes. When they did that, that's when I was like, look, it's got to be in the studio. It's got to be in the studio, and it's got to be real. It's got to be a real conversation. I had entertained a couple of times going to, but I was like, 45 minutes is just not enough. You and I have been talking an hour and a half already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's not enough time. You need more time. You need more time to find out what makes someone tick.
And that's probably what she was afraid of.
Probably what they were afraid of. Maybe not her. I don't think they should have been.
No.
I think we would have had a good old time.
No, you're a good guy.
I think we would have had fun.
I think it was a huge mistake on her part. And let's be honest, like it's the kind of thing that it's reminiscent of forget the congressman that asked Mark Zuckerberg how Facebook makes money. It's just like you're so detached from the modern world. It's like you could spend millions of dollars on all your ad campaign all across YouTube, or you could just go sit in the room with Joe for 3 hours, and I'll tell you which one's going to do better for you, lady. But she picked the ad campaigns on YouTube.
The problem is that I think the people that saw it as they thought they were going to win anyway, apparently. Mm-hmm. And the people that saw it as a negative thought, like, there's been a few blunders where things didn't go well. But I think a lot of those blunders are, I was listening to this woman on the Tucker Carlson show, and she was talking about what Biden was like during the presidency. And one of the things that she said I thought that was very interesting was that there's many people that worked with Biden that said there were moments in his first couple of years where he was very lucid and that he would be actually running the meetings and he had talking points that were written down, but he was having these lucid conversations, and then he would do these public things and he would have blunders. I think a lot of it is just the pressure of performing publicly under intense scrutiny. Like if you have to do a live set, like say if you have to do Saturday Night Live or something like that, and you're going to do a monologue, the pressure of doing that monologue is so much different than the pressure of just going up at a local comedy club.
Oh, sure.
It's insane. And I think that pressure, Joe Biden, as much as, I'm sure he has a high self-opinion, clearly, when he is confronted by the reality that half the country hates him and thinks he's doing a terrible job, and then he has to talk publicly live, then I think those cognitive problems were sort of elevated.
That makes sense.
I think that's the same with her. So I think that's the same with her when she's on Fox with Brett Breyer. I think it's hostile environments. I think it's large crowds. I think it's a lot of things where you don't get to see the real person. So that was my goal. My goal was to try to meet the real person. just like I did with Trump, just try to meet and talk with the real person. And my goal was, what I really wanted to do, we talked about this quite a bit, me and my manager, of doing it on the same day. And my manager, she agreed. She's like, this would be the perfect way to set it up. Like, we both agree, put them both out at the same time, go watch them all, see what you think. That would be the ultimate way to do it. But they never agreed to do it. So all this shit that's in that book that they never talked to us, just not true. Maybe it's someone's trying to preserve their job. Maybe someone's trying to say, hey, it wasn't my fault. They became difficult. No, we didn't become difficult. And the other thing was, like, they wanted to do it that Saturday, the day after Trump. And I said, I'll do it, but it has to be at 8:30 a.m. The reason why was I had a podcast already scheduled that was a live UFC podcast. So we do this thing called Fight Companion. So there was this title fight that was happening in, I think, was it Saudi Arabia? Or was it Dubai or Abu Dhabi? It was somewhere in the Middle East, I believe, if I remember correctly. See if you can find out what that was, just we're clear. I have friends. I flew in 3 of my buddies from California, and we were all going to do this podcast together. Like, we had committed to doing this. Like, they were already in town. Like, I can't just say, no, guys, I can't do this awesome thing because I have to interview Kamala Harris.
No, I understand.
Seems like I should to some people, but that's because you're in the politics business. I'm an MMA commentator. This is part of my job. And I said I would do it. I said I'll do it, but it has to be like 8:30 in the morning because I have to be done by the time the fights start. That's reasonable. Yeah. They didn't do that either. So this idea that I sabotaged her, there's a bunch of people that say I fucked her over or whatever. That's not true. So you can think whatever you want, but it was Abu Dhabi. So that was Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. So for UFC fans, just so you know, for people listening that aren't UFC fans, that was a huge fight. That was a gigantic fight. Max Holloway just beat Justin Gaethje in like literally the knockout of all time. And Ilia Topuria is one of the absolute best fighters on planet Earth, if not number 1 pound for pound, certainly number 2, or number 3. So he's in the top 5 of the absolute best athletes in any weight class. So this was a clash of the titans, the greatest featherweight champion of all time versus the current featherweight champion. Damn. So I'm not going to miss that.
Yeah.
I understand. I work around you. I said I would do it at night. I'll come back. I'll do it at midnight. I don't give a fuck. I'll do it. So it wasn't me fucking someone over. And so just whoever's in charge of spreading that narrative, that's deceptive.
Yeah. And she missed out, man. She could have sat in the same chair that Shane Gillis sat in, right?
Yes. No, he sits in that one.
Explains the stains.
Or it could have been a wreck. But it could have been a wreck with Trump, too. Like there was a moment where me and Trump I was saying, tell me how the 2020 election was stolen. And I feel like if you're, for the last 4 years, have been telling everybody that they robbed you, you should be able to tell people how you know they robbed you, and you should be able to say it.
Articulate it, yeah.
Yes.
Clearly.
I don't, so I don't know what that's about. I don't know if he has other people that tell him that. He compartmentalized, like, look, hey, Rudy Giuliani, you deal with that. I got other shit to deal with. I'm going to deal with this. You tell me they robbed me, I'm going to say they robbed me.
That could be it.
I don't know. I don't know. But so that could have gone sideways, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't.
It goes back to that how you disagree with people thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an asshole about it.
Right. You should be able to communicate with people in a way that it's just about what you're talking about. It's a shitty tactic to try to break a person down as a human being because you want to enforce your argument or say their argument sucks because they suck as a human being too. Like, come on. We're big grown-ups here. Yeah. We can just talk about the actual ideas.
We actually get to where we're trying to get to, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out the other side of this. So seems kind of cut and dry, but a lot of people miss that. The ego's a powerful fucking thing, man.
It really is, and I'm glad we took that little side trip because I had to explain that. But the thing is that little monster rears its ugly head in everything. It doesn't just rear its ugly head in politics. It rears its ugly head in archaeology, in religion, in culture, in everything we do. Yeah. It's a lot of it is, I have said this for so long, I don't want to ever say I was wrong, and I will somehow or another derail any arguments against me. I will call those people racist. I will call those people. I was watching one of your videos where there's this person who listened to what Flint Dibble said about Graham Hancock and Atlantis and connecting Atlantis to white supremacy. And she made the most distorted statement that saying that people of color were not capable, that this is the argument of the people that support Atlantis, people of color were not capable of that sort of civilization, which literally no one has ever said. Because everybody, especially the people that believe that that area of sub-Saharan Africa, the Reichart, Reichart, how do you say it?
I think it's Reichart.
Reichart structure, that is Egypt, or that is rather Atlantis. That is literally in Africa. So who the fuck do you think built it? Like, if you're talking about the pyramids, no one is saying Europeans came to Africa and built the pyramids. No, the Africans built the pyramids. So none of this white supremacy thing makes any sense, because all these people are saying was, I think that this city in Africa was Atlantis. Mm-hmm. I think, which, if you're going to find an ancient civilization that is super advanced, wouldn't you think maybe it would be in an area around where there's fucking for sure ancient advanced civilizations that made pyramids?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer thing.
It's kind of a no-brainer.
What they do, this is where Flint is especially insidious. You know, I got along well with Flint and a bunch of other archaeologists for a long time. But I made a video that went into the details of how Ignatius Donnelly was not the guy who founded modern-day Atlantis hunting. And he did believe in some kind of Aryan first things, and he believed that other races weren't capable of innovating, and
but that's just one douchebag.
He was popular, but the thing is people that came before, they tried to make it out like Ignatius Donnelly and the guys that came before him both believed the Maya were they founded. One of them believed the Maya fucking whooped the ass all the way over into India and shit. He believed that the Maya were the Egyptians.
What?
Yeah. Augustus Le Plagnon is the one that believed the Maya whooped ass all over the world, and the other one was...
were the Mayas supposedly seafaring?
No. This is his...
It's just a wacky idea?
Charles Etienne de Brazier de Bourbourg. These are the two guys that they were the first ones to find like that Chocmol statue with the weird and the heart and the plate. It looks Egyptian. They were the ones that started seeing, they're the first ones to see the similarities between these things. And so they believed that, ancient Egypt is this technologically superior place. And here we've seen the same thing here with similar iconography. So I made a video explaining that this is the SAA, that the letter that the Society for American Archaeology wrote to Netflix to call Graham Hancock a racist, basically, not call him a racist, fuck you guys, it was wrong. It was erroneous. It contained false information. And I pointed that out, and eventually Flint's addressed it, and his argument was, well, it doesn't really matter. It's not a big deal. We use the word comet, and Graham talks about a comet, and this other guy didn't, and it doesn't really matter because so many white supremacists believe this shit anyway. And it was just like, at that point, I was kind of like, okay, this isn't science anymore. And then I watched him do that waffle and bullshit here where he did it with when you were pushing him on it, and he's like, no, I didn't say that. Well, yeah, I said that. Well, no, I didn't say it. And I was just, all right, dude, no, I'm going to drag you for this.
There's too many people that are used to being in a position of authority where they're never questioned like that. And they can say that in front of a class, or they can say that in front of colleagues, and nobody pushes back. And then there's also this problem with leftist ideology where if there is some sort of history at any point in time of white supremacy, like that Ignatius Donnelly guy, like, you have to connect even everything attached to the theories of this advanced city, this advanced lost civilization. You have to attach it to white supremacy, or you are a racist, or you're enabling, or you're dog whistling, which is my favorite. Dog whistling is my...
Yeah, insane.
Oh, I hear racist.
I hear racist. Got him, go lynching.
It's just, it's so dumb because, listen, if you have a place like Egypt, that's way crazier than Atlantis. You already have a place that's fucking insane.
Yes.
That's way crazier. Because whatever Atlantis had, it didn't survive whatever that... If that Reichart structure, if that's really where it is, and it was impacted by the Great Flood, by the end of the Younger Dryas, the impact theory, the water from all the polar caps rushes through and destroys everything, and giant tsunamis everywhere because of the global cataclysm. Okay, it wasn't as good, because if the pyramids are still standing, so that all that shit happened at the same time the pyramids too.
Yeah.
So that what you're saying, if you really believe all that, is that the pyramids were way more advanced than Atlantis, and believing in Atlantis is crazy.
Yeah.
Help me out.
Yeah.
And it's white supremacy, even though it's in the same part of the fucking world. Help me out.
It's always basically, no matter what, they're always going to find a way to not just dismiss it. They're going to poo-poo it. They're going to that's not an underwater mummy. That doesn't look like a tool to me.
Yeah.
It's just this poo-poo attitude that really it does them a huge disservice, because ultimately, the most interested amateurs on the planet would be us, pyramidiots, guys that are into that kind of goofy shit. We're the most interested, just like Carl Sagan knew his audience, the most interested people in space were the UFO crowd. The most interested people in archaeology are not archaeology students. That's their 9 to 5. I'm the one that's reading the shit at 2 o'clock in the morning with the beer in my hand. I love this shit. But I don't want to... You're going to bore me if you talk about stratigraphy. We're going to want a story. We're going to want...
You're going to want something that excites
the
you
mystery.
to dig into it.
So when they literally, deliberately piss on the mystery, it's just like, oh, there's nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Nothing to... Let me tell you about stratigraphy. Nothing to see here. That's why I talk about Carl Sagan all the time. He might have laughed in their face, even with but he never tell them nothing to see here.
Well, you know why? Carl Sagan smoked a lot of weed.
He did.
He smoked a lot of weed. That's very uncomfortable for a lot of people that don't like weed. Oh, it makes you lazy. Nope, you were already lazy.
Yeah.
Weed just got there while you were lazy. It has nothing to do with weed. Stop it. You know?
It's true. I get what you're saying. It's a lot of people like to blame things for say that drugs are all just bad, but I forget the dude's name. That like was the guy that discerned the DNA, like the human DNA.
Francis Crick.
Yeah.
And Carrie Mullis.
Did it well on LSD.
Yeah.
Crack the code on LSD or whatever. I mean, that shit's, it's part of our brains, man. It's there. And as a tribe...
I think there's some controversy about the Francis Crick thing, though, right? Isn't there a controversy about whether Francis Crick was on... I'm pretty sure Carrie Mullis was open when he was talking about the PCR method, that he devised that when he was on acid, which is also he was a huge critic of using that stuff for detecting diseases. He's like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, you don't know, like, he was so angry. Have you ever seen that video where he's angry about Anthony Fauci, saying he does not know what he's doing? He's not a scientist. He's a bureaucrat. See if you can find that video, because it's fascinating, because he's literally talking about, this is pre-COVID, by the way.
Okay.
Because he died, like, right before COVID happened. But he was talking about how PCR should never be used to detect diseases, because you could find these tiny fragments of a disease, but it doesn't even mean that someone's infected. Especially when you're ramping it up to X amount of cycles. Like, they had so many cycles, you had so many false positives, that maybe someone had encountered this thing at one point in time, but it was dormant in their body and dead, but yet you're still, you're looking at such minute particles that you can't use it to detect whether or not someone's sick. And that's what we're using during the pandemic to detect whether or not. So you got so many false positives. Some estimates were higher than 50% false positives.
That's insane.
Insane.
That's
See,
insane.
you find Carrie Mullis on Anthony Fauci. He's like sitting at a desk at his kitchen table, or he's sitting at his kitchen table with a guy he's talking to, and he's just breaking down the difference between the actual science. Have you found it?
It's only a preview of the video on.
I know it's available. I've seen it.
I'm just looking. You're timing. I'm stuck in the
No, I
Russian
understand.
preview site, and I've got to find another one. I'm finding it.
Okay, you'll find it. I'm sure.
So I got to double check and make sure. See, this is not what you wanted. But
That's it right there.
I know,
Second
but
one down.
It's 10 seconds. It's
Russia. Really?
This is Russia. I'm not going there.
It says Russia?
Yandex.ru.
Oh, you're going to get a fucking virus instantaneously. There it is.
Change your computer to Russian script first.
Yeah, I think that's it. So this is Carrie Mullis, won a Nobel Prize for his PCR technique while employed by Emeryville biotech firm.
It is about humanity that wants to go to all the details and stuff and listen. These guys like Fauci get up there and start talking. He doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine, and he should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on the bottom. You know, those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to, and they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera. You can't expect the sheep. What is it?
Yeah. So this was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, 96 it says.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah. So what he's talking about, I think back then, was also the AIDS crisis, which that's a whole nother ball of wax. And if you want to get into that at another time, folks, just please go read Bobby Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci. It's incredible. But so this is another thing. This is more gatekeeping. It's the same kind of thing. This may be in a different way, maybe not to protect the ego, but to protect money.
Yeah. One of the things with COVID that always tickles me on that is the way that they threw I feel like they threw the red herring of a mask at us. I feel like the mask was a bullfighter's cape. I feel like you've only got so many hours in a day. You got to pick your battles, and you've got the mask is an easy symbol. It's everybody can complain about it because it affects everybody. It's an easy touchstone. You can see it. But while everybody's fighting that really is effectively, you just have to fucking wear a hat for a few months or a few years. They're closing down our stores and taking the kid. I got 2 more years of wrestling. Yeah, fuck you. You're never going to make state. Fuck you. You just lost. That's the people. That's the stuff that was getting lost. The masks. I'll wear fucking masks over my face today if it'll bring back white elephant and shit.
There's also no logical explanation. If the vaccine worked, give it to the people that are vulnerable. Let everybody else live their life. That makes the most sense. But they couldn't do that. They had to pretend that the other people were vulnerable. They had to pretend that children were dying of it. They talked about it all the time. No healthy children died of it. It's not true. They tried to pretend that it was really dangerous for young people. It wasn't, unless they were already really sick. What it exposed in this country is that there are a lot of people that are completely full of shit that are in charge of telling us what the truth is, and that also we're really vulnerable in terms of our health. Our health is very vulnerable. Our economy is very vulnerable. We can't just shut the country down for a year and a half. It doesn't work like that. We're vulnerable. It destroyed a lot of businesses, destroyed people's lives, caused so many people to become drug addicts, so many people to commit suicide. There's a loss of life and a loss of hope, and who knows what it's going to do to these young children that had to wear masks when they're in preschool. Who knows what the fuck that does to you? Yeah. Learning how to talk with a mask on, you're not reading mouths and lips, and you're not getting a full facial feature to read off like children need for their development. We've found out that there's a lot of people that just aren't telling you the fucking truth. And the crazy thing is they were doing it in the age of the internet because they had been used to doing it for so long. They didn't develop the thing that people have now. Like now, especially like someone like you or I who does stuff on YouTube, you know that if you say something and it's not true, you got to go back and say, hey, this is what I thought. This is why I thought it, but now I know that this isn't true. Because if you don't do that, no one's ever going to fucking trust you again. Anthony Fauci, in the beginning of the pandemic, don't wear a mask. It doesn't do anything. It's just, if anything, you're going to smutz with it. And then later he's saying, wear a mask. I wear 2. I wear 2 masks. Like, what the fuck? We have video, man. This is a different time. This isn't 1986. You can't just go and tell us some shit and we don't know whether or not you said something completely contrary to that just a month ago.
Yeah, I think that might be part of why Kamala was so worried about the unedited thing. When Hillary fainted a few election cycles ago, that video would have never made the news in the 90s. They just got bought, right? But fucking nobody knew it existed before it was posted. It was just like the dude, and bam, and now the internet has it, and it's too fucking late. So
I think the real thing that did her in was Comey.
Oh, yeah.
I think the investigation into the emails, I think that, in the middle of the...
That was brutal.
That was crazy.
But what I'm getting at is that I think that's, especially for an older politician, somebody like Biden, how many decades of his life was he able to buy any video footage that was going to cause him any problems? He just fucking squashed that. 2 or 3, and now it's like you do nothing, dude. You slip and fall, you're going viral, buddy, and damn thing you could do about it.
Also, who's letting him walk up that fucking stair without having a catcher behind him?
Oh, come on.
I would have some giant dudes, some big old fucking linemen, because if he's going down the stairs and you got slippery shoes on, that's a fucking precarious catch.
Yeah. And
You know, you got a 180-pound man who stumbles and he falls backwards, like, yay, yo, that's the fucking president. Don't just let him walk up that thing on his own with slippery shoes on. After he fell the 3rd time, why did they let him keep doing that?
I think maybe it was some of Gerald Ford's family was hoping he'd break the record.
People don't know.
Giving away our age here.
The old
Chevy
Gerald
Chase.
Ford stuff. Boy, that's old.
It is.
Next, you got to do a Nixon impression.
Oh, God damn.
Yeah, I'm not a crook. Yeah, it's all, the whole thing was very eye-opening, I think, and I think that also led to Trump, destroying in the election.
That's probably has a lot to do with it. I mentioned before, like, they closed that White Elephant store, but like, they closed so many bars in the town. Like, I was thrilled that my favorite bar, Mootsie's, is still around. But they had a closed sign on it when apparently, like, the plumbing above it leaked, and I thought they were gone too because it was closed down for them to fix that in the middle of COVID, and it was just like, God damn it! It's like, we lost so many things in that town that were just little mom and pop outfits, and just comes in and gets replaced with, like,
Target. Yeah.
And like, you come to a city like this and you still got little shops that do well, little cafes and whatnot. But I live out I live in a city, but around it's a bunch of farm country. And there's like the place in Davenport that had these great milkshakes. You can't fucking go there no more. They're closed. They're gone. And it's a bunch of places like that have been around for generations.
And it didn't have to happen that way.
No.
And if you want to be real cynical, the people that are the real progressive leftists, that you should be cynical about that, because it was the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of the United States. The lower and middle class lost $3.9 billion, or trillion? Was it trillion? What was the transfer? It might have been trillion. I think it was like $3.9 trillion over the course of the pandemic. And then that money was transferred to the wealthiest people gained that money. How? What happened? Stocks, mutual funds, what magic are you doing? You basically stole money. Like, something happened, and through your policies, you enabled the wealthiest people to get way wealthier and the poorer people to get way poorer. Yeah. It's like 3.9 trillion. Is that correct? The transfer of wealth.
I know, I'm looking at an article from 2022. I didn't see anything newer. Yeah,
it's a newer one. They were talking about it really recently. They were talking about it like mirrors, exactly.
1 trillion, something in there. 2 trillion, I see.
What year is that?
5.2 trillion. There you go. No, that's expected to pass. I don't know. I'm seeing
so either way,
numbers.
let's be conservative and say it's 3 trillion. That's a crazy amount of money that gets transferred, and no one is like freaked out that this was by policies and this is by keeping everybody's business shut down. You could basically just take over because people still need to buy stuff, and then these big companies that people have stock in, the stock goes way up, and then everybody gets wealthier. This is kind of nuts. Well, that the progressives aren't outraged this idea that it was protecting your health. But how are you sure? Did you look at the data? Because it doesn't seem like it was.
Over several decades, this says it was 50 trillion.
Jeez.
This was from during the pandemic, though.
Jesus.
That's insane.
50 trillion from the bottom 90%. And that's made the U.S. less secure. Yeah, for sure it does. But the problem is, yachts aren't cheap, bro.
No, they're not. I'm not looking at them yet, but maybe next week.
You want to put in an order for one of them supersonic jets? You got to have some cheddar. It might be time to take over a small country.
Or two, yeah. It's pretty wild. The things that were lost during COVID were, in my mind, one of the biggest things was the trust in the scientific community. That they're being honest. And I like science. I like science a lot. And I think that just like most activists and most anything, like when you look online and you see a transgender person is making a complete ass of themselves, that's generally speaking not indicative of the way transgender people are, even on the fucking internet, man. Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing that person, right? But
with everything.
With everything.
With cops, with teachers.
With
you see some crazy teacher saying nutty things in front of the class. That's a small percentage, a tiny. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem, but it's not all teachers.
No, but when it's science, the deal is that science fact checks itself. Like, these guys all throw rocks at each other. They write a paper, and other guys are trying to rip it apart and prove them wrong. And okay, so in that environment, it requires an acceptance for this kind of shit to fly. For them to be able to repeatedly lie in peer-reviewed journals requires their peers to not review the fucking papers. That's really the only way that can happen, and that happens so much. Like, it's still the medical
Clovis first thing. The Clovis first thing, which was another thing that Flint pushed back against, but obviously there's a lot of receipts. Like, that guy almost lost his career, was shunned by science, and he was right.
Yeah.
And our mainstream archaeologists tore that guy apart with personal attacks. They tried to destroy his reputation, destroy his career, because they didn't want to be proven wrong.
They tried. Tom Dillahay was the guy who...
Explain the whole thing to people so that they don't know it.
Absolutely. Clovis first is the theory that the first people in the Americas came over the Bering Land Bridge like 15,000 years ago, and they used the Clovis points, and this was the first American humans. Before that, there was no people here. Now, they started finding sites that were 30,000 years old, 25,000 years old, and it started fucking with that narrative, and archaeologists were, for the most part, pushing heavily against it. There were a few scientists that would make the finds and that they would fight for them. Now, eventually it's been overturned. Now that Clovis first is not the narrative anymore. They're not really sure exactly who got here first. They know the Bering Land Bridge was part of it, but they also think there was some people probably from the ocean in South America, and who knows for sure. It's up in the air. They're not so certain anymore. But the Clovis first debate, it was so bad that the guy that won it, basically, a site in Chile called Monte Verde, was the site that eventually, he had a bunch of people there. They looked at the site, and when they left, they were convinced that that was the end of the debate for all intents and purposes. There's still a few holdouts.
How old was Monte Verde estimated to be?
30,000 years, I think, 27,000, right in there. The guy that discovered that site and was excavating it, Tom Dillahay, was living in Chile under the time that Pinochet was in charge of Chile. One of his colleagues, and there's video of this, I use this clip frequently, one of his colleagues called the state newspaper and said Monte Verde is a CIA-planted site in order to get him down into Chile. His wife and kids are there. They fucking threatened his life over. This is the archaeologist version of swatting.
Whoa.
Yeah, the video's all over the place. I use this clip frequently. They basically threatened his life straight up. He got letters to people saying that he wasn't a real scientist, that he didn't have a degree.
Is this Dillahay explaining this in the video?
Yeah, Tom Dillahay explaining this.
If Jamie could find it, what would the video be telling?
If you have to go on Google, Tom Dillahay interview will probably do it. Dillehay. Sorry, I should have had that one pegged because
No worries.
I use this clip. I probably use it 10 times. It's not one of those. Maybe put archaeology with it, because he's talking to another archaeologist. Dang it!
Challenging Clovis first.
Here, I will.
Archaeologists threaten one of their own over Clovis first. Is that
No,
it?
it's on a. There's me. That would actually has the
Okay,
clip.
play
Yeah,
that
go
then.
ahead. Yeah, that has it.
Archaeologist Tom Dillahay was instrumental in overturning Clovis first with his excavations at Monte Verde, but this caused him to have his life threatened by his own colleagues. His excavations were done in Chile during the reign of the ruthless dictator Pinochet. Clovis first was hotly debated amongst archaeologists at the time, and one of them decided to use Pinochet as a means to silence Tom.
Moved down to Chile during the dictatorship years of Pinochet. So I was opening up anthropology department. So politically it was difficult at that time. And another colleague who sent a letter to the newspaper in Chile, one of the major newspapers, saying that Monte Verde was creation of the CIA to plant me down there. And, that puts you and your family in a dangerous situation in a country like that at that time.
Seems to me like the archaeologist version of swatting someone.
There's a small minority of people who will do anything in their power to defend their paradigm.
Yeah. That's it.
That's fucking wild.
That's crazy.
That's over
What if that
the
guy
top.
got murdered? Would they be happy? If they took him and publicly executed him because they said he was a CIA spy?
I'd like to say no, but I mean...
Would they be happy? That's such a psychotic thing to do to someone just because... But, these people, like, everything that they identify as is the expert in this particular field.
And they'll try to pretend, Flint tried to pretend that was no big deal. That was a one-off. Scientific debates happen, and a lot of guys will say, oh, yeah, that Clovis first, it was bad, but we don't usually do that, dude. Before Clovis first, there was the Folsom first debate, the idea that the Folsom people were the first ones here, and if you found anything older than, I think, 7,000 years or 3,000 years, whatever it was, anything older than a Folsom culture thing, it was bullshit, and you couldn't have a field. It's on Wikipedia still. You could read about. There's a couple of guys that basically formed a guard and didn't let anything get past that point until eventually the Clovis first thing. It's not the first time. This is standard operating procedure. Create a paradigm, defend it with life and death. There's a guy named Max Planck. He was a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and he has Planck's principle. It's known as, and it is. Science does not progress one discovery at a time. It progresses one funeral at a time.
Ooh.
And this is a Nobel Prize winning physicist that said that, not Graham Hancock. So it's fucking pretty hefty to think about that. They're just... People are people, man.
Yeah.
Put us on the moon, you're going to have people on the moon. Same fucking problems.
Same fucking problems. People on Mars. Someone's going to make a sex cult on Mars.
It'll be a
first
great
people will be like, look, I'm the fucking king of Mars, bitch. I'm running it now. That's just, it's just humans. And unfortunately, even humans that are attached to what we think of as these egoless pursuits like science.
Yeah.
The ego fucks up even science.
But that's where it does frustrate me, because if you take that job, it's like, okay, anytime if me and you get in a fight, it's going to be, it's aggressive, and you get worked up and you get emotional. But if you become a cop, I expect you to fucking know that and roll that shit back.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the scientist. I expect you to recognize that and roll that shit back.
Yeah, roll that shit back. That's your job. Your
That's
job
your
is
job.
to tell us what the truth is. And if you lie, it doesn't mean that all that truth that you told in the past is now accurate. It just means you suck. That's all it means. Yeah. So if you're a really good scientist, you say, this is what we thought. This is what we know now. And this is really amazing. And so I was wrong. All these books that I wrote, stop buying them, folks. I'm going to have to write a new book. They don't ever want to say that.
No.
They never want to think that those lectures that they taught, that those were inaccurate, and that their whole life, they would be a mockery. They really would, because those scientists are fucking vicious. They're so vicious after each other. They attack each other because they all want to be the fucking smartest guy in the room. And when anybody, Mike's a fucking moron. Mike thinks that. You heard him talk about Fauci, the way Kerry Mullis talked about. That's how they talk about each other.
That's exactly.
He doesn't know anything. I'd say it right to his face. It's just natural human aggression that's transferred into this field that we think of as purely academic.
And quite frequently, these people are, like I said earlier, a little emotionally off, a little socially
Sure.
weird. And
bullied their whole life. Now all of a sudden they get to be the bully,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the things that does happen. It's the revenge of the nerds. It really is.
No, you're right.
That's what revenge of the nerds is.
It is.
It's like, finally, we get our turn to be mean. Didn't we not learn anything? This is how wars get started, people. This is how people wind up killing people, because you other the other.
By the way, when I drew the parallel about us fighting, I don't want a picture of me next to Shane Gillis. So thank you very much. I'm good. don't need that.
The whole idea of the truth is what we all should be pursuing. And it's just really unfortunate that people are attached to these things that they've said for so long, so much that they're willing to go out of their way to prove someone inaccurate when they are accurate. And the Clovis first thing is one of the better examples of that. And now that there's irrefutable evidence, like the footprints that they found in New Mexico that have seeds in them that are 22,000+ years old.
White sands, yes.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's out the window now. You don't know. How about now? We don't know. We don't know how people got here. We don't know how long they've been here.
Quit trying to find a clear answer and keep investigating.
Right, especially when we know South America had life, had all these humans living in South America. Like, why wouldn't they move up to North America? Like, why would that be weird? Like, what's the oldest known people in South America? What's the oldest?
Sure. I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not sure.
The whole Amazon thing's got to throw that a big old monkey wrench into that.
Well, they recently, you know who Thor Heyerdahl was, the guy that did like the Kon-Tiki voyage to prove that you could cross the ocean in a raft and all that shit. Okay,
yeah,
he's an archaeologist, and now he pointed out that on Easter Island that the platform that the biggest, oldest, whatever moai or whatever they're called. That platform, the polygonal masonry strongly resembled what he saw in Peru, to the point where he hypothesized that these were connected. And this was just mocked by archaeologists for the longest time. Now, not only do they have genetic evidence in the form of human DNA with a solid genetic drift from South America heading out into Polynesia as well, but Easter Island has breadfruit, has ginger, and a couple of sweet potato. It's got food from both Asia and South America and the oldest habited layers that they found. So like they've the old, and that's scientifically.
And what is the oldest habited layers?
It's like I want to say like 1,200 or 1,800 years ago. It's not real old, but it's old enough that like the oldest place that they've excavated and found that the first people, it looks like the first people that showed up there came there from Asia and South America already. They've been connected to both.
What was the evidence of cocaine in mummies? Was that bullshit?
I'm not sure about that. It's one of the things that every time I look into it, the data is kind of threadbare, and as a skeptical guy and a guy who's had his share of time in bars and bathrooms, I have a much stronger feeling that there was some anthropologist in the 70s was just doing a fucking bump. I'm sorry. That's smoking a cigarette and doing a bump on the sarcophagus is way more likely than, that's just to me, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and if you're doing coke, you might want to put a little coke on the mummy. I'm going to do a coke off this fucking
fuck
mummy's
yeah.
nose.
Do a bump around this mummy's nose.
You're coked out of your mind, and you're doing archaeology, and it's the 70s.
Oh,
and no one is like looking over your shoulder.
Yeah.
You're a wild fucking Indiana Jones type cokehead.
Fuck, there's already people with their AI fucking artwork out trying to make this.
For sure. What was the evidence? See if you can find what the evidence for cocaine in Egyptian mummies was.
The Russian scientist that said he found some in 1992, 90s.
Look, I found coke. He's like, he's doing blow. He's doing blow. They bust him. I found cocaine.
It was in the mummy. I don't know.
Yeah. It's not mine. Definitely not my cocaine.
Cocaine, hashish, and nicotine in the hair of Henut Tawi.
Oh. Well,
cocaine, hashish,
nicotine. Okay. German toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova discovered traces of cocaine, hashish, and nicotine on Henut Tawi. How do you say that? Henut Tawi's? How do you say his name?
Henut Tawi?
Tawi's
I
hair.
don't know.
As well as on the hair of several other mummies of the museum, which is significant that the only source for cocaine and nicotine had at that time been considered to be the cocoa and tobacco plants native to the Americas, and were not thought to have been present in Africa until after Columbus voyaged to the Americas. The result was interpreted by theorists and supporters of contacts between pre-Columbian people and ancient Egyptians as a proof for their claims. The findings are controversial because while other researchers have also detected the presence of cocaine and nicotine in Egyptian mummies, two successive analyses of the other groups of Egyptian mummies and human remains failed to fully reproduce Balabanova's results, and some showing positive results only for nicotine. But even that is interesting, right?
Well, yeah. And then the next line actually basically says what I just did. After these experiments, even assuming that cocaine was actually found on the mummies, it is possible that this could be contamination.
Yeah, it says that. It says assuming that cocaine was actually found on the mummies, could be contamination which occurred after the discovery of the mummies. The same argument could be applied to nicotine, but in addition, various plants other than tobacco are a source of nicotine, and two of these, Withenia somnifera and Apium graveolens, were known to be used by the ancient Egyptians. Okay, so they did have some sort of nicotine plant.
That was 92. 2007, researchers in Peru may have also found some.
Ooh, in Incan mummies. But Incan mummies that's
there.
Yeah, that's where cocaine is.
If it was actual cocaine, that would be crazy. If it was not just coca plant, but actual like
a little
processed.
baggie for the future for your travels.
Come aliens, please come back.
He's got a little vial they tucked away with him in his grave.
We've done everything we could to get them aliens back. We're going to process some of that shit. Come on, boys.
It would be fascinating if we actually could prove that somehow or other people from South America had made their way to Egypt and back and forth. And another interesting argument for that was always the Olmecs. Like, what they look Polynesian or African.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily look like they're from South America.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the arguments that were made by those guys I brought up earlier that were back in the 1860s. They were, one of them was big into linguists and linguistics, and he made all these language models and stuff as to why that Maya was the first or proto-language that was all these other ones were built on. The other dude was really into iconography. I'm sure you've seen some of the symbols that like you see around the world, like that girl that's sitting on the lions and the Master of Beasts symbols. Yeah. Things like that it's not, these aren't.
Get Jamie to pull that up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, look up Master of Beasts, You're
going to find some cartoon.
Yeah, I stumbled across something that says that they did more testing that says that there might have been cocaine in up to 8 bodies.
Ooh.
Whoa.
They did multiple testing.
Yeah, if you're living in Egypt, you're going to get some coke if you've got that kind of cheddar. You know what I mean? If you got like gold headdresses, and what's the ultimate thing to have? Coke. You know?
Clearly.
Yeah, clearly.
You're trying to get more women's, right?
If you got some guy who's coming over from South America, he's bringing coke with him.
They did. In the wake of controversy, they used radioimmunoassay gas chromatography and mass spectrometry. And all of those got the same results. All bone, soft tissue, and hair contained traces of the drug, ruling out possibility of external contamination.
Okay, so they did have cocaine. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, there you go. Now you got some weird shit.
I still don't know if it's accurate, though.
I gotta look into this.
Let's just slam the book and say it's accurate, Jamie, for the sake of
Master
arguing.
of Beasts.
Master of Beasts. If you look up like ancient symbol, or hopefully that'll bring it up. I forget.
Is that He-Man? Something like that?
Master of the Universe. I have the power. God damn, we're getting old today with the references. Sorry, young guys.
We are. Gerald Ford and He-Man. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So that exists all over the world.
Yeah, that type of iconography of usually a woman, but sometimes a man, all the way back into like Karahoyuk, Turkey, like one of those Gobekli Tepe type of sites, has this symbol, and that type of symbol. Look at
that Master of Animals one, the Wikipedia one in the middle. The gray one, yeah, right there where your cursor just was, Jamie. No, the one where your cursor was. Sorry, above that. That's cool too, but above that one. What's that one from?
I don't know.
Wild.
I know, that is crazy.
Because it looks like it's got 2 monsters next to her. That image that we were just looking on.
There we go.
There it is. There it is right there. Like, what the fuck is that? What are those things next to her? They look like some kind of lion lizard hybrid. But look, they have like
Dragon.
lizard tongues.
Snake?
Yeah.
It's tough to say. I mean, obviously not a snake.
tail
with
and
feet,
wings.
Yeah.
They have wings. Like, what the fuck is that? And why does that exist all over the world?
That's really where, like, it's an interesting thing that when you see that kind of iconography, it's not the argument of, well, a nail looks like a nail anywhere because you invented a nail. That falls apart because this is just symbols, right? This is just symbolism. So that would imply some contact, right?
Right.
And,
why?
And
why
it shows up way long ago.
Yeah. And why? Yeah. How is that getting all around the world?
Clearly, people are bringing it. Now, see, there's one place, just because I don't necessarily ascribe to lost technology or ancient high technology, don't get me wrong, when it comes to like lost civilization, I'm very much of the opinion that there was a civilization from before 12,000 years ago that got wiped out by some sort of cataclysm. I don't think that they had like real high technology, but it wouldn't have taken much technology for them to appear better than their contemporaries.
And we see evidence for that today too, which is a really good point. People say, how is it possible that the rest of the world could have been so far behind? Well, they were. Okay, first of all, with the Egyptians, they definitely were.
Exactly.
Definitely. Like, proven everybody else was way far behind them. But even today, my friend Paul Rosalie, he lives in the Amazon. He protects rainforests and hires these people that used to be loggers to now protect the rainforest. And amazing guy. He just filmed the other day an uncontacted tribe. Just the other day. Wow. There's uncontacted tribes all throughout there. They're completely naked, and they're living a subsistence lifestyle in the Amazon forest. Who knows what their fucking language is?
Yeah.
Who knows what their culture is about?
Who knows
but this
what
is
they know?
a completely uncontacted tribe that exists today, along with us with AI on our smartphones.
Yeah, exactly.
Same time period, right? So the idea that this couldn't exist at other parts of the world in the past, no, it fucking for sure could. By the way, it fucking did in the 1800s when settlers were making their way across the United States.
The sun never sets on the British Empire was because Europe was hop, skip, and a jump ahead of the rest of the world when it came to sailing and conquering people. And that's, I mean, you could argue about whether that's good or bad or whatever.
But it just existed. It existed.
When we're talking about the abilities, they were better at it.
And in the United States, it's the best example. In what was going on when settlers came from Europe and making their way across the country, they were encountering Stone Age tribes.
Yeah, effectively, yes.
100% Stone Age. They were using stone tools.
Yeah.
They were using flint arrowheads.
Yeah. There was a couple of people that had copper, but they weren't making weapons by and large from it.
Right. They were making jewelry and stuff. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy, but it's just a natural function of how human beings adapt to their environment. And it seems that the Nile Valley in Egypt was an abundant, rich environment that had so much resources it allowed those people to stay there and thrive for thousands of years.
And if you think of the area being a green Sahara, and then it slowly gets smaller, that Nile Delta would explain that concentration of people and ideas and stuff, because you've got what was once spread out across a large area being all shoved together, making it almost a proto-city type of thing or whatever. I'm of the opinion that whatever the lost civilization was, I'm of the opinion that they were really good at seafaring, which made that they were really good at astronomy. And I think that like the handbag symbol, I think that that's a symbol of their ability to, I think that it is a symbol for a day, like we were talking about before on that pillar at Gobekli Tepe, that there's 3 of those handbags, and he says each one it's actually a sunrise. It's a
Why is the handbag a sunrise?
It's the ground, and it's a sun. It's not an actual handbag. It's a ground, and could you look up Gobekli Tepe pillar 43? Sorry, Jamie. Thank you. In that case, it looks less like a handbag because there's nobody holding it. And in this case, Dr. Martin Sweatman's done the work, and looks like it's 3 different days he has it symbolized as. So going with that, you see there's 3 handbags there, each one with an animal next to it. He believes that that's denoting the...
So not a handbag, but the arc of the sun over the earth.
Yes. So when somebody's holding one of those, I think that it's a symbol for a knowledge of astronomy that most people don't have. The kind of a knowledge that...
So the astronomers are the people holding the handbags. They're the ones who could explain to you the cycles of time.
And they're the ones that were capable of seafarers. They were the ones that when they would show up, they would have the same teamwork, the same ability to work with ropes and all that shit they could use to move megaliths. The same mathematics or an extension of it. It's the kind of thing that would be easier for them to move a big rock with a team of guys that have worked together working on boats than it would be for them to move a big rock with a team of people who had never done anything like that before. And that would also explain why a lot of times these are lined up with stars and shit like that, because astronomy would be very important to them. So I do think that there was a lost civilization. I mean, even simple shit like the bow and arrow, in all honesty, if you think about how complicated that would be to effectively create all the way. It's easy for a dude to figure out the tension, but building a flight and an arrow that's like weighted, it's way different than a spear. It's being launched from the back, not the center, so you can't just transfer it over. This is requiring multiple people over multiple generations, in my opinion. I think that the fact that we see it all over the fucking planet, it says something.
That probably people were traveling.
Yeah, it's
not something that people would figure out on their own everywhere.
Now, we have atlatls too, right?
Yeah.
And people figured those ones out, but that seems like a more simple device.
Yeah, it's a lot simpler.
So why isn't that everywhere instead of the bow and arrow? Probably was, but the bow and arrow supplanted it, and it was only kept where you really needed the penetrating power of the atlatl.
Right.
So that's, again, this is all just spitballing, but we don't know for sure. I could say that I do, but I don't. So.
It's so interesting. Really so interesting because the concept of if these mummies that show cocaine really are proof that somehow or another someone came from the Americas with cocaine and made their way to Egypt, boy, that throws the whole thing, throws a monkey wrench into the whole gears of our timeline of civilization. Like,
oh, man.
How were they doing that? How did they get over there? That's so fucking far.
Anunnaki taxi cab service.
What's your...
sorry.
No.
This, based off of what you're saying with like it's a time measuring tool,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for more examples of it. This is a very interesting explanation. I don't know if it's accurate. Hopefully you can shed some light on it. Does this make any sense, what it's saying? About...
water clock?
Yeah, so baboon, because there's... damn it, I can pull it up in a second.
No, it's okay. Let's just read
sitting
this.
On something that looks like a basket. And
what is this from? What is this? Where you get this? Reddit?
Reddit, yeah, there's a post
Reddit.
about Reddit. So I'm explaining what this is.
The hieroglyph depicts one form of something called a water clock, or say that word.
Clepsydra.
Hydrologia, which was used to tell the time by the drainage of water through a small hole. The item associated with Thoth due to its use as a measuring tool and thus miniature versions or models made of, what's that word? Faience? What's that word?
I don't know. Faience. Sorry.
Often had baboons incorporated into their structure. It's said that Horapolo in Hieroglyphica that it was traditional to allow water to drain out of a hole in the baboon's genitalia because the baboon apparently cries and urinates 12 times a day on the equinoxes. So you just like force feed water into a baboon to figure out what time it is?
Synchronized clocks.
He's just howling. Oh, it's time to go to eat. The monkey's howling. Regardless of the exact reason, the hole was indeed sometimes placed at the end of the baboon's penis. Model non-functional versions of the water clock often mimic the shape of the hieroglyph itself, similar to the Ma'at figurine, and may have been used in offering rituals. See if you can find one of those figurines. So that's a water clock built on the idea, and the water comes out of the baboon's penis.
And I know that the ancient Egyptians would measure time during the evening hours with water clocks like that. They would have people tasked with keeping time for the area.
Oh, look at that. It's a baboon water clock. The water it drips out of his dick. And when all the water, so it's like a, sort of like an hourglass. Yeah, but it's the baboon's dick. That's crazy.
That's impressive.
I found out something new today.
Yeah, me too.
That makes it worth it.
Right below that pillar, they're showing. I think someone else has explained to us that those are like they think that's the time, like calendar. Those are days or months or something like that.
Yes.
So if all this is time.
Yes, that's
wow.
So what Dr. Martin Sweatman thinks is those 3 handbags there are 3 of the cardinal points, like 2 equinoxes and 1 solstice, I think, and then the condor down there holding the sun is what he believes. He believes that's Sagittarius. And that it's basically denoting that the 4th cardinal point of the year, and that all those other marks add up to the squares are a month, the V's are days, and at the end of it, according to his interpretation, it's where he thinks of it's a recording of the time that the asteroid hit, the Younger Dryas impact.
Whoa.
And he's wrote 2 scientific papers on it. He's come under a lot of fire for it, but
Shocker.
The majority of the fire is really funny. It's like, okay, he's a chemical engineer, and so he's a mathematician by trade. He's a number cruncher. And so the first thing everybody says, he's not an archaeology. You got a fucking number cruncher in here. And it's like the field of archaeoastronomy, as it's called, was first officially recognized because of the work of a guy named Alexander Thom. He's the one that was like plotting out a bunch of shit in England and whatnot, right? And seeing that this lines up with that, and it looks like the ancients would stand here to look there. He predicted that they would find a viewing platform, and it was at a certain site. He's like, they stood up on the side of that hill. I'll bet you find a platform there. They found that platform, and now he's starting to do some science here. He's making predictions, and they're coming true. This guy was an engineer, not a chemical engineer. He was a construction engineer, but he had fuck all to do with archaeology. This is very common. If you look at the teams that make up archaeoastronomy expeditions, it's usually an astronomer, an archaeologist, and then somebody who's just a math whiz. He's he's way above the pay grade on either one of these guys when it comes to number crunching. That's generally speaking the teams that make these things up. So when they go beating at this guy, right, that betrays they don't even know this fucking field. And it's, of course, these are all scientists and historians by and large that are doing that. So it's really hilarious. It's like you guys are, you don't even look. You don't even open the goddamn book. One of them famously or infamously to me, because I drag him for it frequently, said, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, well, I hope you understand. And it's like, well, I understand between us talking, but I do not fucking understand that for a scientist. Fuck you on that. If your job is to test chemicals to figure out which one does what, you don't say, well, it kind of looks like this one, so I'll skip it. You fucking test each one. Same thing here. Hypothesis comes at you, you don't get to be like, well, it kind of resembles the one that one kook came up with. We'll reject it. You test it. Or you don't call it science. You call it guesswork.
Well, it's also really interesting in regards to Gobekli Tepe that they've essentially put a giant halt on the amount of excavations being done there. And they've even planted trees over the areas that have not been excavated yet.
Yeah, they've done... some of the tree footage that I've seen is just abhorrent.
And aren't the trees a protected species of tree?
Yep.
So you can't cut them down.
Can't cut them down. And
which is like, why would you do that?
Well,
why would you do that over one of the most important historical sites in human history?
Well, the guy that did it, like, he owns the site, right? And then they find it, and now he's trying to sell it. Or not trying to sell, excuse me. The government comes like 10 years later and tells them that they're going to buy it. And it's just like if the government's going to build a highway, it doesn't matter how much you paid for your home, doesn't matter what you got on your property, they're going to come and look at it, and they have an equation form, and that's all that matters. The swimming pool's not on that form, fucking swimming pool doesn't get paid for. Well, on this farmland, adding olive trees made that an orchard instead of basically arid farmland.
Made it more valuable.
Made it more valuable. But what's funny about this is, like, we talk about the arguments against this stuff and how stupid it is. Okay, Jim points out that these trees are a problem. And since it's Jim, and Jim is fucking public enemy number one to archaeologists, but I'm coming to get you, Jim. It's going to be my spot soon. But anyway, since Jim is fucking hated by these guys, it doesn't matter. There is tons of documentation on the problems with having tree roots above a site, all the way from contamination with different microbes to they use a certain species of snail in Europe to determine certain dates, and tree roots that punch right through that shit and introduce that snail to places it shouldn't be, right? Tree roots will, if they're one of those enclosures at Gobekli Tepe is filled with water or had a well in it, all those roots are screaming down that thing and just blowing it to shit. It's gone. So there's a number of things archaeologists, everything I just told you, that's shit archaeologists say. I learned all that from reading papers about the problem that tree roots can cause to archaeological sites. Because everybody knows they cause, at least all the construction guys know they cause problems with foundations. But they don't care. They'll argue all day, oh, those tree roots aren't so bad, that's a protective, it's not such a big deal. It's all because Jim mentioned it. Had Flint mentioned it first, they would be all up in arms about taking care of those trees. It's so clearly Red Rover. It's all about teams. It's just it's just stupid at the point where it's reprehensible at times, to be honest with you.
It's just shocking that steps haven't been taken to mitigate that when you consider that this is one of the most important archaeological sites ever. So it threw the monkey wrench into the whole idea that people were capable of building stuff like that only around 6,000 years ago.
Yeah. It blasted that on its ear. Like you were saying earlier, I remember, it drives me nuts because I can't find the clip, but I remember seeing it years ago of Graham talking to somebody and the guy saying, that show me the civilization.
Yeah, that was with Zawi Hawass, and there was another archaeologist, the guy with glasses.
Yeah, that's
and he was
saying it.
Openly dismissive in the most disgusting way. Like, where's the evidence?
Yeah. So then they find it. But back in those days, the standard operating model for humans becoming from hunter-gatherers to civilization was you had to start farming, and then you created a surplus of food. And once you had enough of a surplus of food for long enough, you started to have these ruling classes emerge. You get your astronomers and your priests and your shamans, and all these guys don't want to work. And so pretty soon you get these cities going and shit. But this can only happen when we have a huge surplus of food because that's obviously just wasted labor. Well, Gobekli Tepe really threw that on its ear because there ain't no goddamn farming right then. There's the beginnings of it. There ain't no surplus of food there. There's no surplus of human created food. You might be finding lots of animal bones and shit, but it wasn't like they grew a bunch of food. So it completely destroyed that entire narrative. And that's the part that, because it's a Graham Hancock site, they're slow to really admit that, but go buy a book from the 90s and read about how humans progressed. And buy an anthropology book, and you'll see it very clear that they completely had to rewrite shit because of Gobekli Tepe.
Yeah, and it's a weird one too because they know it was intentionally covered up 11,000 years ago.
That one's wild.
That's wild.
That's one thing that's been pushed back on a lot, but it does look like there's papers published both ways, but it does look like, last I saw, it does look like the consensus is it was buried deliberately.
What's the pushback?
The sides of the hill would like collapse into the thing, and so that they would just eventually just kind of push some more of it in there and just leveled it out so they could use the area because it was a bunch of holes in the ground you couldn't walk your donkeys over or anything. I know it's a little...
Seems like a lot of work. There's a lot of areas around it you can walk your donkeys.
Yeah.
It's not like the whole area.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Gobekli Tepe, like any of those sites, I'm well aware. Just like because Jimmy's involved with it, anything Graham Hancock touches, those guys, they're going to poo-poo it. They're just going to dismiss it.
Right.
And it's sad because like he is, them hitting him with the racist thing in particular. That's good. You know, Graham. That hits him. That fucking hurts him.
He's very sensitive.
He doesn't, and that kind of shit, man. There are people that are Atlantis hunters today. There's the guy Robert Zafir. I hate to say his name even, but I will because he needs to be put on blast a bit. This guy he's an Atlantis bro. He thinks that the DNA story that we've been told out of Africa is wrong. Okay, fine, whatever. Where the rubber hits the road is when he starts saying, he'll show like pictures of like old school anthropological models of proto-humans that are real dark skin and big hair coming out and looking half monkey, half man. And then he'll say there's no way that this could come from the same stock, and then show like a little 6-year-old Danish girl with perfect fucking big blue eyes. And this is this kind of constant digs at Africans, not out of Africa, but at Africa. They were all these different species bred with different hominids, and these guys bred with the stupid ones, and these other guys bred with smart ones, and these guys bred with strong ones. And it's like, it's racist, for lack of a better term. It might not even be what you would consider white supremacist, but it's definitely, when you're done with, if you were to take everything he said and accept it, you would walk away thinking that different groups of humans are clearly better than each other genetically, fucking hands down, and you can judge it based on skin. So that is racist, right?
What does that have to do with Atlantis?
Well, he believes that Atlantis was like the people that spread the ideas around and stuff. Kind of the same stuff I was saying earlier about that Ignatius Donnelly guy.
Oh, okay.
So he is what you would think. He's got 300,000 subscribers or so on YouTube. He's not a nobody. So you would think he's the guy that these guys would be poking at for being a fucking racist, but they don't. And there's a real big reason why they almost never do. There's like 2 people with any following at all that have letters next to their name that are taking shots at this guy on YouTube. And the reason is, he is what they actually claim Graham is. So it's like, if you have somebody that's complaining about a trans activist, the one that's screaming, "Call me ma'am," that's what they're trying to say Graham is. But actually, that's what Robert is. And then Graham just would be standing there being like, "Hey, how's it going?"
So the problem is, if you pay attention to that guy and you see the real racist, then it doesn't work when you call Graham a racist.
That you can't call him a racist anymore, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they
probably don't want to give him any attention.
Well, they give him attention. They talk about him. They do. They just like I said, I didn't even want to mention his name, and I know I'm going to get people yelling at me about saying that. But it's the stuff that he puts out is very clearly. If you take it all on board, you would be a racist. If you were to just accept it all, you'd be like, oh, well, that guy's black. He's just not as smart as me. Sorry. Fuck. There's a clip for you, Flint. Have fun with that.
So the one of the things that I saw on your channel in regards to Atlantis was this alloy that they found these ingots. They found this.
What's the name of it? I'm having trouble with Ocalium.
Something like that?
Yeah, something like
and
that.
It's a combination of zinc and what?
It's zinc and copper and silver, I think. It was like mostly zinc and copper, and maybe it was a tiny bit of silver, and it might have just been zinc and copper.
And
actually.
they have found shipwrecks that have this stuff in it.
And it was written about before, too, like it wasn't just written about with Atlantis. Like they'd written about it. It was metal that the Greeks used. It was basically from one little mountain region. And
I have one of your videos that I was watching yesterday. I could find it and send it to Jamie. Did you find it, Jamie?
Yeah,
that's it. That's the word.
Yep.
How do you say that word?
Orichalcum.
Orichalcum metal ingots.
Calicum, maybe. I don't know.
Recovered from shipwreck off Sicily. Yep, that's it. So this was an early version of a metal that they had created.
Yeah. They think that it might be an alloy that was found, but they that it was like a naturally occurring copper that way. They're not 100%, I believe.
But you can make it?
We could, yes.
As an alloy?
We could, yes. And what's interesting is it does talk about that in can
you scroll up a little, Jamie, so I can read that? It says, today most scholars agree that orichalcum is a brass-like alloy which was made in antiquity by cementation. The process was achieved with the reaction of zinc ore, charcoal, and copper metal in a crucible. Analyzed by X-ray fluorescence, with X-ray fluorescence. Oh, duh. By Dario Panetta of TQ Technologies for Quality, the 39 ingots turned to be an alloy made with 75 to 80% copper, 15 to 20% zinc, and small percentages of nickel, lead, and iron. What would be the benefit of that alloy?
It was considered like beautiful, like gold, but cheaper and easier to get.
Oh.
And
considered
harder.
second only to gold in value.
Yeah.
Was found and mined in many parts of legendary Atlantis in ancient times.
Yeah, they said that the temple walls in Atlantis were supposed to have been covered with that stuff. But that's where, myself, and I know this, I think that there's a really good chance that a lot of the evidence that we have, a lot of the written records, the myths and stuff of Atlantis, I think a lot of that's going to have a cultural infusion so heavy into it that a lot of the details will get lost, and you could almost just be like, there was a civilization that was more advanced than the people that wrote about them, and that's almost all you could take away sometimes. Like the Greeks, Atlantis happened to be a democratic society. Well, no shit. The Greeks, they valued that democracy. It was something they were real proud of. So, of course, this great place was democratic. And of course, they had the same, that rich-ass metal, they covered their temples and that shit, bro. To me, it seemed, you know what I mean? It's just like, a lot of people say that the whole thing, that Plato just used Atlantis as an allegory or a myth.
What is this, Jamie?
It's like brass.
I'll say... chemical analysis of the ingots found in 2015 shipwreck, high-quality brass. Brass is an alloy of copper and zinc. While the ancient Greeks did not know metallic zinc, they knew zinc-coating ores, and the description that orichalcum has similar color and shine as gold fits well with the properties of brass. While brass is not exactly a precious metal, it does not corrode and is widely used on jewelry, marine instruments, and medical instruments. Goldsmiths and jewelers describe brass as mahogany of metals. Wasn't that that device, I don't remember how to say the word,
Antikythera?
Antikythera, yeah. Wasn't that made out of brass as well?
Part of it was brass, yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. That thing's insane.
Bananas.
That thing is insane. It shows some serious thinking going on, serious planning. And as I've said numerous times, I think that if it didn't look so clunky when they found it, I don't think that we'd have it. I think it ended up on some rich guy's shelf because it's way too fucking cool. But they looked at it and they're just like, there's like a mass of metal with like some gear frozen to it, or I don't know. It's all corroded shit. And then they bring it up and hand it off and he's like, oh, fuck me. Look what we got here. Because, that's, that looks kind of cool, but it doesn't look nearly as...
It just looks like a wheel.
And it was found next to a bunch of statues, right? Mm-hmm. So there was stuff of real value as far as they were concerned.
But what's really fascinating is the 3D analysis of what it was and how it worked. See if you can find that. When they show, that's it right there. This is the depiction of what it looked like when it was actually functional.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's like, what the fuck is that thing? And this was some sort of super sophisticated calendar, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's You know that thing at school where you would...
I thought it was how they traveled.
No.
It says weather patterns and stuff.
No, it does
weather
have...
patterns?
Star phases and weather patterns.
Right.
It's, you know those things that you, in high school or college where you turn a crank and the sun and all the planets go around it, right?
Corresponding weather predictions with
what
star phases. You can correspond weather with star phases? I guess if you're doing a calendar, right? So if you're looking at when is it going to be winter?
Yeah,
wow.
exactly.
Oh, fucking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
That's like
stuff.
way earlier than anybody thought anybody had a mechanical clock.
Well, yeah, there's stuff I haven't researched for a long time, but I remember...
Oh, that's what it looks like when it's separated.
Yeah.
This is someone making a planetary thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's effectively... That's the same kind of thing, basically.
So that's what it's based on? All those little...
Well, no, it's this. Those are based on it, or the Antikythera mechanism was way before that, right? Like,
yeah.
So,
what year was this supposedly?
I want to say like 1500 BC or something is what it's. But I might be. I
think it just said 500 BC.
Okay. But yeah.
Is that what it said, Jamie?
Discovered in 1901.
2nd century BC. Oh, so okay.
No, okay.
200 BC. But there was definitely more than one of those.
Oh, God.
That's what's crazy. So this is the whole thing when you're talking about ancient technology. If this is only 2,200 years ago, 15,000 years ago, you ain't going to find shit. Like, that is so much longer. And if you think about how eroded that is, if that thing was still in the ocean 10,000 years from now, there'd be nothing left.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that's really gross about the whole shipwreck dismissal, is that these ships are made out of wood. The wood would be gone. This idea that it would all be preserved because of cold water, there's no evidence of that. There's evidence of things that are like 600 years old, 1,000 years old. As soon as you get older than that, you get nothing but the pottery and the jewelry on the floor of the ocean, right?
That's absolutely right. It's we don't have fuck all for shipwrecks way back in those days, and those ships that are preserved from even close to like 10,000 years ago aren't ships. They're little fucking canoes that are found in bogs and places, right? If it's in the ocean, it's not. It's Swiss cheese after a few thousand years, and you ain't gonna have nothing left.
Yeah.
One of the things that really is sad about that whole deal is there was a potential for a real good discussion to be had there. Flint does know a lot about archaeology, and he could have sat down with Graham and had a good conversation about this stuff. But in order to do that, he would have had to have not construed it as a debate in his mind. I mean, it clearly was still going to get labeled as such, but by making it a debate in his head, it's like
you have to win.
You have to win, and so you have to sew shut holes that can't be sewn shut. If we're talking about like that, there's shipwrecks. Oh well, they've got to make sure that there's no shipwrecks. You got to make sure that there's no place for him to speculate whatsoever, because, and that's just like, dude. So you end up with.
Right, because he's still right in one way, right? And the way he's right is there's no evidence of a 10,000-year-old shipwreck.
No, there is no evidence of a 10,000-year-old shipwreck. Absolutely.
That's all you have to say. Mm-hmm. And you have to say, well, we have to make a giant leap if you want to assume that people were seafarers. But it is possible. And if it's possible that they did it 2,000 years ago, like do we really know for absolute certainty what year the boat was invented?
Thank you. But I'll tell you something that's kind of painful and hilarious but sad about this. You know, Flint, they're closing the anthropology department at the university Flint teaches at right now. They're closing down other anthropology departments and archaeology departments across the world right now, across the country. There's I just posted one a couple days ago. Flint was sitting here with Graham talking to you, and there was the opportunity for him to say, we do need to do more investigation, Graham. I completely agree with you, which is why I think we need to get some people out there to do some underwater archaeology. Where do you think, Graham? We don't see a few different places. He could be drumming up fucking business with and then then at the very least, even if he looked down his nose at everything Graham had to say, the cheddar comes in, the investigations happen, and everybody's happy. Instead, they're closing his fucking department. I mean, dude, to me, it's just such a. I mean, might not necessarily be directly related, but he had an opportunity that he completely didn't just piss it away. He just drove it into the ground, did the opposite of what he should have done with it, and they do that as a matter of course. Jimmy Corsetti brought up once about a year ago on Twitter. He's like, "Oh yeah, I think the Nephilim in the Bible, it talks about the giants, the Nephilim. I think maybe that might be an extinct species of hominid." And maybe Denisovans, maybe Neanderthal. So instead of being like, hey, that's interesting, man, but you know what? Denisovans and Neanderthal are both the wrong size neither one of them were bigger than humans, so they couldn't be giants. You need to look into Gigantopithecus or maybe some other, and sent Jim on to go learn about science. Instead, they said, no, it's fucking stupid. Both of these are smaller than that. God, this Jimmy Corsetti guy's a fucking grifter. God, he's stupid. And then I come along and point out that you missed an opportunity here, guys. Why are you doing it like this? Why are you being dicks instead of trying? You're here trying to be a science educator, right?
Right.
He has a bigger platform than you, right?
The giant thing is always weird to me because there's so many people that believe in kooky shit that want to believe there was giants. And that they hid them, the Smithsonian, they've got them tucked away. Like, why? Why would they hide giants? Like, what would society fall apart if we knew that at one point in time there were 11-foot men running around? And what happened to them? And maybe they're just like a lot of other large animals that just like they need too many resources.
Yeah, you ate them all, and that's why they're gone.
Yeah.
But
or maybe they're just dumb as shit and huge.
We ate them.
And we ate them. Yeah, or we killed them. Maybe we got tired of them raiding our villages. And they couldn't figure out weapons because they were so big they never had to.
Yeah.
If we do know that there's just tiny hobbit people, why wouldn't we assume that, look, if the tallest humans are like, what's the tallest guy ever? He's like 9 feet tall.
8'3".
Okay.
Robert Wadlow. I grew up near him, so.
So let's imagine something 2 feet bigger than that. That's not so hard to believe.
No.
That there was a bunch of them. Is that hard to believe? If we find out that there was little hobbit people, and if we find out there was Denisovans, and what's those big-headed people that they found? We were talking about it. They found in China with the extra large skulls. It's a very recent discovery. We were just talking about it. They thought at one point in time they were Denisovans, and now they think it's a completely separate chain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're always finding these new little weird humans. But these big-headed people, they had like large brows, and their skulls were much larger than ours. And they were, yeah. And we pulled images of them the other day. Remember? They looked giant. We had jacked versions of it.
They call them just the large head people. I don't see a better name for it.
Fuck.
Big
Google
head
big head people discovered.
I did. Literally the website says large head people.
Yeah.
It's just they don't have a better name for it.
But remember, we did find a better name the other day. That's it. Those are the people. That's the article. So this is December 2024. So it's really recent.
Wow,
Provocative new piece of nature proposed a whole new group of ancient humans, cousins of the Denisovans and Neanderthals, that once lived alongside Homo sapiens in Eastern Asia more than 100,000 years ago. The brains of these extinct humans, who probably hunted horses in small groups, were much bigger than any other hominin of their time, including our own species.
Wow.
Yeah. What?
That's
Bigger brain
crazy.
things? Like, what is this thing?
Jularan.
Jularan. Yeah, Google Jularan images. There's some cool fucking CGI versions of what they think this thing looked like. Go to images.
Damn.
There's one where he's like super jacked. Oh, that's it. Like that one over there. Far, like, look at that. Super jacked primate that stands upright. Here's a weird one. How come all the intelligent things stand upright? Is it because you need your hands free? Because if you're walking on 4 legs, you never figure anything out because you're always using your hands to walk with.
That might be part of it.
Like you need to become bipedal.
Yeah.
Like
opposable thumbs.
Yeah.
So you can.
Well, the aliens
manipulate.
don't though. They gave up on that. They would just want 3 digits.
Well, that's because they all just do tablets now.
Yeah, they're so advanced. They're just scrolling.
Yeah.
You ever seen a little kid take a magazine and try to like pinch?
I saw this today. This is the world's tallest woman meeting the world's smallest woman.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, look how.
That's insane. And those are both human beings.
Yep.
Right. At the same time.
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me about the giant bones, like the reports that the things that they use to really their smoking gun is like there's a few reports from like the West Coast and Grand Canyon and shit, and they would send these letters back being like, or there'd be a newspaper that this guy discovered these big giant bones and they're bringing them back. And
right.
I'm of the opinion, being the skeptical person I'm of the opinion that this was more of an announcement to the people back east that, hey, if these things happen to get stolen along the way and I happen to find a bunch of money along the way, now's your chance, because once they get to the Smithsonian boys, they're theirs. So I don't think any of them made it. If these exist, if they were giant bones at all, I don't think a damn one of them made it to the Smithsonian. I think they got bought up and they're sitting in. I mean, fuck, come on. These guys have their
Some
fingers.
Jeff Bezos type character from II
The
has it in his house.
archaeology became a field
Imagine
because
if you go over some skull and bone type dude's house and you have a
It's just
fucking
like all
giant skeleton. You're like,
Jesus
What?
Christ, he's all
you have a giant skeleton in your
fucking
house?
metal plates on his
They're
face
real?
and stuff. He's all like
They're
half
fucking
robot.
real. How many people have those little alien babies? Those little alien skeletons? How many people? I mean, if people find out about that, some crazy Chinese billionaire, it's like, get me a little alien. Come on, I want it for my study.
Yeah, and that's basically how those
That probably
guys-
happens a lot, right? Because these archaeologists aren't making much money.
No, and of course it happens a lot, especially in the third world and shit.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and that's where not all, but that's where a lot of the cool stuff is. But you go
Right.
to a place like that, it's like your boy up in Alaska finds a spot, and he because it's not human remains, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Now,
Right.
if those were native remains, it'd be a different story. But and like he's pulling cash out of that. But guys in other countries where they don't even have enough to feed. I mean, look at how the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, right? They just buy them off of fucking little kids and shit, right? The people that had no money. Like the kids throw rocks up there and then they find them, and then the guy buys the first ones were bought from the kids that found them.
Isn't that crazy?
It's insane, and for nothing, of course.
Right.
You
And
know?
imagine if they were just burned somewhere. Imagine someone said this is heresy and lit them on fire.
Like
We would have lost it all. Like Library of Alexandria.
like all that shit that ISIS blew up.
Oh right.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oof.
Crazy.
Man, that hurt. Seeing those videos was like bad.
I read that about the mummies. That's how they found them, the Nazca mummies. They were just grave robbers because they were found in a cemetery area, but someone found some weird ones, I guess, amongst the bodies.
And which
They ended
ones
up
do
in
you think
Mexico and
Which ones do you think they took first?
Yeah.
You walk in there and there's all these 200
Regular
of them.
dudes.
One of them's really extra crazy looking. Give me that one.
Give me the alien. The one with the giant head.
The reports that I told you Rockefeller got those big skulls. The reports say that they gave him 3 or 4 bundles that were in desperate need of repair. I call bullshit on that. I think he got the 4 best motherfucking bundles they had.
Probably got him set up with like a UFO in the background in his house. You got to go to a secret room. Look, the visitors. They've been here forever.
But
one of the things I did want to ask you is one of the wackier theories that I read online was that there was a discovery of some sort of an Egyptian temple in the Grand Canyon.
Yes, I've heard this.
Yeah.
That's basically one guy's story. It's cool.
I want to believe. That's the problem.
I want to believe too.
That's the problem.
I want to believe too.
But why would they hide that from us?
Well, the only reason that there's a part of the Grand Canyon you can't go to. That is true.
Dun, dun, dun.
And there's where this.
Why can't you go? What's the rule?
I think it has to do with Native American stuff, but I haven't dug too terribly into this, to be honest with you.
Let them have a casino and let us go there.
It might even just be because they're worried about people falling off the side of a cliff or something and dying.
But they die every day.
Yeah, they do.
Not every day, but like every year, someone dies at the Grand Canyon.
But this is supposed to be, that cave was supposed to be in that area, and it's supposed to be like pretty hard to find, pretty inaccessible. But yeah, it was supposed to have all kinds of Egyptian relics and stuff in there.
Can you imagine if the government's been hiding that from us and UFOs? You guys found an Egyptian temple in the Grand Canyon. You hid it for so long, you had to keep hiding it. Otherwise, you would have been an asshole 5 years ago, 100 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we don't ever admit we were assholes, so we'll just like keep it hidden forever and ever.
We'll know who killed JFK before we get to see what's in that cave.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah, I'm not buying anything.
No, no.
Yeah, we're
Once
going to release the documents, sure.
Once they said they were going to release the documents, I was like, sweet, I'm going to go look into it. And they're like, oh, it's just going to take a couple, 3. Okay, fuck you.
Well, they have to go through it all. You know,
because they haven't done that yet.
And yeah, I don't know.
Well, I get it. If the family, maybe it could be the grandson of one of the people involved has got power or something nowadays. It doesn't really matter a whole lot.
Right.
It's like just if there's power involved, they're just going to kick that
Especially
can.
if somehow or another you could show that those people profited from that power and then that family's inherited that money and they'd be held liable.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dan, I really enjoy your videos. They're great. It's a great channel, DeDunking. It's
Thanks,
awesome. Joe. It's on YouTube. Always great to talk to you. I'm glad you came back here to do it again, and let's do it another time, man.
Yeah, I would love
Anytime
that. Thank
some
you so
wild
much,
shit goes
man.
down.
I would love
Come
that.
down here and we'll decipher it.
Thanks for the invite, Joe. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Great conversation.
I enjoyed it. All right. Bye, everybody.